Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I am doing well. I'm doing well. Yes, somebody asked me if I'm still doing the chicken stuff on TikTok, because over there it's just like, it was like, okay. But I'll share something with you that's really interesting. Today I have outside, I keep my chicken feed in one of those big metal containers, right next to my coop. But it's, as a matter of fact, I recently moved it and I've got it on some cement blocks and everything. So anyway, I go out there first thing in the morning. It's kind of very foggy out here this morning, really misty. And I've got a very old and very tall oak tree branches that go over that whole area. When I come to the can, it is bright. When I mean bright red, it looked like blood. It had to be blood because, as anybody knows, oaks, there's nothing, there's no berries, there's nothing on that tree that puts out red anything. And I'm not talking like dull red, bright red. And for a minute there, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, one of my chickens. But usually when a predator takes the chicken or something, that you see a bunch of feathers and stuff. If you don't find the chicken, you find a lot of feathers. And the truth is, most of the predators out here, some of them are pretty big, unless we got bald eagles, but some of them can't carry off a whole chicken unless it's a smaller chick. But anyway, that was really interesting. That's the first time I've ever had that bright. I mean, it must have just happened because the droplets of blood, and some of it was kind of like even thick, was bright, bright, bright red. And I remember looking up at the branches, and I'm thinking the only thing I know, we have squirrels out here, but usually, they don't go to those outer branches. So it's a mystery, but something got taken, and something that took it, squeezed some blood out of it and kept going. And that's the first time that's ever happened to me. So there's my chicken story for the day. Hopefully whatever it is won't come back. But we have owls and we have other birds of prey and all that neat stuff. Let's get on to the good part, which is who's the guest today. And this gentleman has been here before at Stories of the Supernatural. His name is Al Santariga. He is the founder of the Bronxville Paranormal Society. His research in ufology led to his position as a director of the New York State UFO Project. Cryptids are also part of his interest and research. He is a director of the New York State Sasquatch Organization and director of the North American Dogman Project, New York State chapter. He's also a podcaster and co-host of the critically acclaimed digital radio network show Beyond the Realm. And now he's also known as Squatch Father. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Al?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Marlene. Yes, I am the Squatch Father.
You're the Squatch Father now.
Yes.
Hey, it's like when we were talking about this, and the reason why I bring that up, besides this is something new that I hadn't heard from the last time that I spoke to Al. And he was explaining to me that, he's working with some, younger, newer researchers in the field. And, for us that we've been doing this for so many years, we were commenting on how no matter how many books, how many podcasts you listen to, how many reality shows you look at, it's never going to take the place of what field training, going out there and doing it. And you were saying, Al, how you found that some of them, the boots on the ground only go as far as the sofa.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of guys who claim to be boots on the ground, but they really never get away. They never really go out on the road. They just surf the net and take everybody else's information. You know,
Wow.
I actually stopped writing up reports for the BPS group page because I caught guys stealing my reports, changing,
Yeah,
locations and
changing some
stuff
stuff
like that,
around.
and putting it in books and all kinds of stuff. And I was
Are
like,
you
you know
serious?
what? I'm like, you know what? Or talking about it on their podcast, but editing what they didn't want in and what they didn't want out, which really,
Right.
don't edit my stuff because if you edit it, it may not sound legit. I put
But you must have
everything
been
in there
thinking,
for.
wait a minute, that sounds familiar.
Oh
Wait.
yeah, and I call them out. I call these people out, and the minute I call them out, they go underground. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And you never see them again. But so I just stopped. I stopped putting reports out on the page because I'm not going to go and do all this investigation and put the time in, the effort, the energy, and get all these experiences, and then put them on the page for the members to read. That's why I was doing
Right.
it, for the members. But then these guys come in and they oh, I like that, or they take this from that, they take that from that report, and they and then they go and they write books and they talk about them on podcasts and they talk about it at symposiums, and it's like, no, I'm done. You're not going
Yeah.
to steal
You're
my
like
shit from me
piggybacking on
anymore.
somebody else's work.
Yeah.
And you know what? You know as well as I do that field work, contrary to what you see in the reality shows, you sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes nothing happens, sometimes it's really cold, sometimes it's really hot. But you learn a lot at the same time. Even on the cases where nothing really like comes out, you still learn a lot. There's a lot of things that the benefits of going out in the field, as they
Yeah,
say.
there's nothing like being boots on the ground. There's just nothing like it. I don't care how many books you read or how many things you research online. Yeah, I read a lot of books too when I was a kid growing up because my
Sure.
brother was a parapsychologist and he had a million books. So I read all the books, and it taught me a lot of stuff. But I wasn't wowed until I got out in the field and started doing it for
Right.
myself. And then it was like, holy, it's whenever you experience a first in the field, it's a mind-blowing experience. I don't care what it is, even after all these years of doing this, I still have epiphanies. I still
Yeah.
have a wow moments, and and that's what keeps me going back out, those epiphanies, those wow moments, and like I was
Right.
telling you off air, there's a couple of guys that I've taken under my wing, and what I do is they're in the cryptid field, and what I do is I throw them bones every now and then. I'll throw them a bone. I'll say, hey, do this, let me know what you get, or hey, do that, or I'll
Right.
tell them what's the difference between a real Bigfoot den and a Dogman den. You know what I mean? Or what's the difference
Right.
between a shelter or something like that? And and these guys, they're wowed when I tell them this stuff because they, as podcasters, they interview hundreds of experts, and nobody is giving
Yeah,
them
I know what you mean about the experts.
nobody's giving them this information. They're
Sure.
like one dude was like, I just interviewed two experts in the field the other night, and I asked them that particular question, and they gave me an answer, but nothing like what you just told me. I said, because they've never been in the dens. I
Yes.
have. I've
Right.
been in the Dogman den. I've been in the Sasquatch den. I've been in the Sasquatch shelters. Never been in one of those nests that they make, but I've been in the dens. I've been in the shelters. I've been
Let
in the
me ask you,
Dogman.
now that you're saying that, what did you find? when you went into these dens, or how did you know this is one versus the other? What did I mean?
Well, you know, I'm gonna be honest with you. I really don't want to discuss that here because
Okay,
I like to keep that in my back pocket. So
okay.
when I hear people on the radio talking,
I
I
know
know
you're gonna
who's calling. I'm calling bullshit on, and who I'm not calling bullshit
right.
on.
What
You
are
know
they?
what I
What are
mean?
they? What are they? It's like right. Like you've been in the den. Yeah. Okay. Then what is it or what's there?
And I told these guys that are researchers now, you know, because everybody's a researcher slash podcaster. So I
Right.
told these guys, listen, this is how you're going to vet these people. If they don't tell you what I told you, then they're full of shit. They've never been in a den, you know, or if they were in a bear den, or you know what I mean,
Right. Right.
or a
Right. Right.
hunting
Right.
blind or something like that, because there's differences. There's major differences, and again, it also depends on the woods you're in. If you're in a
Mm-hmm.
pine forest compared to a hardwood forest, you know what I mean? The
Right.
dens are made differently, you know, and a lot of people don't discuss that. You know, they say the same thing everywhere because this is what they've heard, you know.
Right.
And like I said, to you off air when I was talking, they call me the old man, you know, but I have guys that I reach out to. When I reach out to my senior advisors, let's call them, I don't reach out to just one person. I reach out to 6, and I ask
Okay.
them all the same question, and I see what comes back to me, you know, and it's usually the same answer, just phrased differently, you know. It's
Yeah.
very funny. And then, you know, like I'll say, why don't you guys just give me you know, throw me a bone, and they'll say no, because you have to learn this stuff at your own pace, and has to come when the time is right. And this is the way the Native Americans taught them. So this is the
Right.
way they're teaching me. I mean, yeah, I'm throwing my guys a bone because, you know, they're young, and they don't have to wait till they're 60 years old to find this stuff out. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Exactly.
If I give them a head start, right,
Sure.
25-year head start, then that means that 25 years from now, who knows what they may
Right. They're
find
gonna
out.
either take it and run with it. In other words, know the value of it versus.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it may advance the field so much more, because
Of
now
course.
they don't have to go all this time to get where, you know, where I am. They're getting it 25 years ahead of time, you know. I'm trying to get around that curve, you know, that learning curve, you
And you know
know.
why I asked you more than anything? I was wondering if in any of the dens, and if you don't want to answer, I understand. As far as predation, if you found any bones, and I mean, everybody assumes yes, Dogman and Bigfoot, deer, you're thinking, okay, these are big animals, they got to eat a lot of protein. So, you think, okay, what type of animals are they there as far as food sources? So I'm thinking always deer, but I'm always wondering, is there anything else that they eat? And if you had ever found evidence of this,
Yeah,
because
they'll eat anything, you know what I
they're
mean?
like
But
opportunists, huh?
yeah, they'll eat anything, but they don't use their den as a boneyard. You know what I
No?
mean? Their den is strictly for as a living quarters. You know,
Okay.
they don't go to the bathroom in it. They keep it pretty clean. You
Well,
know,
you
as
know
far
why?
as
You know that some predators will take, food back to their dens, and then others, I guess they eat it in the field wherever they catch it or,
yeah, no,
you
I mean some predator mountain lions will do that. You know, if they have a cave close by, they'll drag it into the cave to eat it,
Mhm.
and then they'll just like kick the bones to the side. But you got to remember, these cryptids are really intelligent. So if they brought bones back to their den, or a carcass, and then they ate it, and they threw the bones out in front of their den, then people would come to look at those bones, and it
Right.
would lead them right to their den. So they wouldn't do something like that, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did hear one story. I was told to me by one of my nieces. I have 2 nieces that work in the forestry service, you know,
Okay.
and I was talking to one out in California, one in New Mexico, and I was talking to them about the Bigfoot stuff, and one of them did say that there was a hunter that went missing one year, and they went looking for him, and they couldn't find him, and 2 3 years go by, and the guy just disappeared off the face of the earth, and
Mhm.
then one of her fellow rangers was hiking off trail one day. He wasn't even working. He was just hiking, and he was coming up incline. And when he got to a certain level, he noticed that the hedges, the bushes, the pricker bushes, and all this stuff were pulled over, almost like a tunnel, you know.
Okay.
So he was like, what the hell is this? So if he would have been standing at the same level as it, he wouldn't have noticed the tunnel, you know.
Okay.
He had to be below it to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And he crawled in there and he said it went left, it went right, it went left, it went right. Finally opened up into a big circle, circumference, open area. And when he got inside, the shrubs and everything that were inside weren't pulled over. They were pushed up. So you would have had to been on a ridge looking down to actually look in. You know what I mean? It was like almost a 10-foot wall of shrubs pushed up. Okay. And one side of this area was very clean, and the other side, it was a boneyard. And as he started going through the boneyard, he found a human skeleton, and buried underneath all the bones. I mean, most of the bones were all animal bones, but there was a human skeleton. And then under some of the bones was a rifle. And then they called in the rest of the forestry department. They went in and they just like bulldozed away right in, you know. And they put the bones together. The forensic people came in and put the bones, and it figured, you know, between the registration on his rifle, the serial number, and the dental, they realized it was the hunter that went missing. So somebody ate him, you know, something ate him. And what they did,
you know what's really funny? Sometimes you think, well, and that's the thing, and it's, you know, sometimes when they only find bones, it's like, you know, was he killed by this predator, or did he just die and the predator found him and, you know, hey man, free meal, you know? Unless
there was no way to prove that whatever ate the meat off the bones killed him, because, you know, there was no evidence of that. It was just, you know, it wasn't like he had a skull crush or anything like that. It was
exactly.
But what they did, though, what the forestry department did, though, once they did all the forensic on it and everything, they burnt that area down. So there was no evidence of it, you know, like a controlled burn. They burnt it down and they got rid of all the evidence once they took everything they wanted out of it. But that's the only time I've ever heard of like one of these cryptids having a boneyard in its own area, you know what I mean? And to me, that sounds like a rogue or a lone wolf on his own, you know what I mean?
You know what? People don't realize that animals get sick and old also.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, sometimes when wolves get old, they'll hunt anything, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes an animal that normally could, they have to do things they normally would because they're either old or sick. Some, you know, animals get sick out there in the wild.
Or injured too. They could be injured.
Anything could, that their normal hunting patterns, they can't do it. So they'll do whatever they can, you know.
We're you know, people are easy targets. You know, we're very
yeah, I know.
You know, if we're not carrying a firearm or a knife or machete or something to defend ourselves, we're not fighting off 150-pound wolf or 150-pound mountain lion with our bare hands, or a 500-pound black bear. It's just not happening. No.
Do you think, Alan, I don't know if you found evidence of this or you've heard stories where some of these park services, they kind of try to squash stories about cryptids, like, you know, Dogman. I mean, obviously that you can't, like, about for bears and cougars, because, you know, they're there. If you know, they're in that part of the country.
They're a known predator.
But they don't never wanted to get out like, hey, we did find some type of evidence where a supposed cryptid maybe, you know, took a human being, because they're like, that's the last thing we need.
Well, from what I'm told from my nieces, the Bigfoot and the Dogman are in the handbook when you sign up. And it tells you what to do in case hikers or campers come across them. And apparently, if Bigfoot is spotted in a camp, what they'll do is they'll take all those people out of that campsite, move them to another campsite, and just leave that area alone, you know?
Yes.
If it's a Dogman, then it's a whole different story. They take everybody out and they move them to another location, but then they'll shut down that whole side of the mountain.
I've heard of that.
They'll shut the whole side of the mountain
I have
down.
heard of that. I've heard of people.
When it's a Dogman, because I guess they must know that the Dogman may be a little bit more aggressive than the Sasquatch.
Yes.
Yeah, they know the Sasquatch doesn't really want to deal with people. You know, it's just 99% of the times if you run across a Sasquatch in the wild, it's by accident, and it's going to look at you and turn and walk the other way because it just doesn't want to deal with you. You know.
Right. I've heard of people that go to certain campsites on a regular basis, and then all of a sudden these campsites will be closed down, and they'll ask around like, "Hey, what's wrong?" You know, and there's not like, "Oh, we closed it because whatever," you know. And sometimes they finally kind of like hear something along like a cryptid sighting, and you know. But of course, these park people, they're not going to talk about that, but they don't ever give a real good reason why they've closed down certain part of the park.
To my understanding, the go-to line is we're getting ready to do a controlled burn.
There you go. Probably,
we're gonna move everybody out of the area just in case it gets out of control, and you know, and nobody wants to get stuck in a forest fire.
Of course not.
So
absolutely not.
Everybody will get out of there as fast as they possibly can. Yeah, that's the go-to. We're getting ready to do a controlled burn, so we're shutting everything down in this area. And then every day,
and then there's no control burn.
No, there's never burn, but you know.
Yes, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the go-to line. Yeah.
Right. Let's get people out of here before somebody comes tearing their hair out, you know, from the bush, or we have the people that, you know, that go missing and God knows. But yeah, I imagine that your nieces must have a lot of good stories as far as things that they see out there.
You know, they love me and I love them, and we pick each other's brains all the time. As a matter of fact, I had a nephew who was a major in the Marine Corps in South Carolina too, and he was head of like a helicopter division, and they would fly from North Carolina, I think it is, or South Carolina, down to Jacksonville, Florida, back and forth with the helicopters. Right. And he used to tell me about all the time that Uncle Al, you won't believe, every time we go up to go down, the orange orbs come out from the ocean and watch us.
Wow.
Yeah, the orange orbs come out of the ocean and they watch us, and we're told by our commanders not to engage, not to make contact, just go our own separate way. We're not allowed to even fly over to see what they are.
Right, just like pretend it's not there kind of deal.
Pretend it's not there and don't discuss it with anybody. And he goes, Uncle Al, those things that every single time we go up, he goes, and we go up like 3 times a week to go back and forth from Jacksonville, South Carolina. And he says, they're always there. They're just always there. Nobody knows what they are. Nobody goes out to investigate. We're told to stand down and just go follow orders, and that's what we do, you know. And this is, you know, and he's a major, you know what I mean? He's not a low
right. He's like,
And
do you think, like, Al, do you think it's, how can I say this? Do you think they know what it is, or they just don't, you know, or maybe, you know, sometimes I wonder, they know what it is or they don't know what it is, and they're just saying, since we don't know exactly what it is and we don't know how to deal with it, we'll just like ignore it.
I think there are people who know what it is, and these people pass the information down to just ignore it, and there won't be any hostile encounters, you know. Just ignore it and don't bother them. They won't bother you, because I think there were times where these especially the Marines, because they're so gung-ho, you know, that have taken shots at these things, you know, and have been shot down out of the sky, and then it's, you know, the helicopter goes down, it's either pilot fault or faulty engine or something, you know what I mean? They're not going to tell you the truth what happened, you know, but I think they just it's just
I heard, you remember the pilot that disappeared over here in the Bermuda Triangle, I think, what was it, 1945, out of the coast of Florida?
Sure.
That there's different versions, like where did they end up?
Yeah,
Some
there
people say
was a whole unit. I think there was like
it was a whole
four
unit, and the people that went
four
out to look for him
P
also disappeared.
P-51 Mustangs. I think they were something like that, or
Right. And
something like that. Yeah.
I was looking something up, and it's really interesting. The squad leader, I think on the original part, the first ones that went out, is as a matter of fact, they were doing target practice. There's an old wreck ship off Bimini called the Sampona, and they did target practice and all this. And
Yeah, they dropping
this guy,
torpedoes. Yeah.
when they kind of like it, and it's when I read it, I was like, okay. Believe it or not, originally the Navy was kind of like laying the blame on his shoulders, in so many words, without really knowing what happened to them because they were never found, or the planes were never found. And believe it or not, his mom hammered the Navy so much that they had to change the wording on their report to say they just didn't know what happened, because she was like, no, you're not going to hold my son.
Right, because he was a squad leader. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
He was a squad leader. And apparently, they had to follow wherever he was going.
Yeah. Well, the Bermuda Triangle is a pretty wild place. I've been in the Bermuda Triangle, and I've experienced that electromagnetic thing that happens in there. And it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. We were down South Florida one year, my cousin Anthony and I, and we went fishing with a friend of ours, Frank, and my brother-in-law Joe. And we're fishing, and we're not catching anything. And the barracudas were eating all our bait, and so we decided it was really, really, really hot. So I said, you know what, I'm jumping in, and we jumped in, and we're swimming, and then all of a sudden we feel like 6 fins coming at us, so we couldn't get out of the water fast enough.
I bet.
But they were
water,
dolphins.
huh?
They were dolphins. They weren't sharks.
Yeah, but good. Let me find out what
as soon as you see that fin, man, let me tell you.
Of course.
But then when we ran out of bait, Frank said, you know what? We're just on the outskirts of the Bermuda Triangle. You guys want to go into the Bermuda Triangle? I was 18. My cousin Anthony was like 23 or something like that, 20 years old, 21. And we're like, yeah, let's go into the Bermuda Triangle. And my brother was like, Frank, don't stop messing around here, because we could see Miami, and
right.
Like,
everything like what Bimini is like, what, 60 miles off of
it was a beautiful sunny day. You could see it felt like it was close enough to swim to. Okay. And so Frank says, okay, let's do it. So he starts up the boat, and we're going out, and he goes, okay, we're actually in the Bermuda Triangle now. We're going. And Joe's like, Frank, don't go too far out, And then all of a sudden, this hand to God, I swear to God, this is all true. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, all the compasses started spinning like tops.
Wow.
We didn't know what direction we were going. We got turned around. It got dark. It got windy. It started raining. It started hailing. And when I tell you, it was like 100 degrees out that day.
And you must have been like, what happened?
It was like the Twilight Zone, right?
Okay.
And then the motor wouldn't start. And my brother-in-law was freaking out. And Frank was like, don't freak out. It's a sailboat. We put the sails up, And
you're like, if not, I'm paddling. Whatever. Then, getting out of here.
Then as quickly as it came, it was gone. It was a bright, beautiful, sunny day again. The water was coming. When I'm telling you, the swells were coming up over the front of the boat. They were like 6-foot swells. And then all of a sudden, the compasses started working. The motor turned right on. And my brother says, okay, Frank, turn around. Let's get the hell out of here. And we got out of there. We made a beeline back to Miami Beach. But I mean, it was and if I didn't experience that, I mean, I always believed that the Bermuda Triangle had something to do with electromagnetic energy,
Sure.
But to experience it for yourself, when I tell you every hair in my body was tingling, it was the strangest feeling in the world. And it was crazy. I mean, it made the whole trip to Florida that year worth it. I was like, oh man, that was it.
Let me tell you something. And that thing about, because, they say that, because from what I understand, when that flight went out, the weather was good. Same thing like what you're describing, good weather. And you're telling me, okay, somehow, and then I'm thinking, okay, what if, like what you said, everything started malfunctioning, all the stuff in these planes just weren't working, but nothing, the radios weren't working. And I've heard some people say that they basically landed like in Central Florida, like they were so turned around. And I'm thinking, all right, but then the rescue people also disappeared, and that's what I have a
Yes.
problem with. It's
Yeah.
like they disappeared too. It's like there's
And
something's going on.
that was a big plane that went out looking for
Yeah.
them. And that plane disappeared. And then they sent out like the 7th Fleet all around
Yes.
the Florida, the Gulf, and everywhere the Caribbean, and
Yes.
they couldn't find anything, not one floating seat,
No wreckage,
nothing.
No oil,
I mean,
that
you're
oily
talking about,
water
yeah,
stuff.
of course, yeah. And you had hundreds of Navy ships out there with
Mhm.
thousands of sailors looking, and they found nothing.
And it was quick. It was a quick thing. They sent out people pretty like right.
Yeah, no, they went right out as soon as they realized that went down. That crew went down. They sent out that big search and rescue plane, and when that one went down, they sent out the ships. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was crazy. I mean, it was an absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that the Bermuda Triangle is some kind of electromagnetic portal.
Where you heard a lot of crazy stories that people don't realize is that, during Prohibition, of course they didn't, that's where you get the rum runners and the bootleggers, because you could produce in Bimini in the Bahamas. It was not illegal. So what they would do is they would have like warehouses of liquor there, and then these rum runners would load up the ships and, basically bring in to the coastline. And those guys coming to and from Bimini out to the coast, up and down the east coast of Florida, they had a lot of weird experiences out there. And of course they didn't have a lot of the same. We're talking here 1920s and stuff like that.
Yep.
But they saw a lot of phenomena as far as, like you said, the weird lights and things of that nature out there.
I mean, it's just, it's a place of high strangeness. I believe it's a place where there's an actual portal, and I think every now and then that portal opens up,
right,
and pulls something in.
Yes.
I just absolutely believe it. I mean, I've always believed it. I always believed that about the Bermuda Triangle. There are certain things in my life that when I seen it, I believed it. There was a feeling, some kind of energy that came off, and just, this is legit. This isn't BS. The first time I seen the Patty footage, I remember we were in the movies. We were going to see James Bond or something, and they had the footage before the James Bond movie. And I'm sitting in there in the movie theater with like 10 of my cousins, and we're all fighting and everything. And it came on, and when it was over, like all my cousins were like, "Oh, that's a bunch of crap." I was like, "Dude, that's real. That thing is real. I'm telling you, that footage is real." And they're like, "Oh, you're nuts." And I'm like, "I'm telling you, that footage is real. There's just certain things that ring true, that has the energy that comes off it is legit." You know what I mean? And I don't know how to explain energy. You know what I mean? But
right. And there's something that that we capture beyond what we see sometimes, that we filter through our brain. In other words, not just consciously, but that you look at something and I'm sure you've seen it now, like that's real. That's like, nah, that's somebody faking it. And I know that film they've gone back and forth, but the last I heard, it's like it turns out it's a female, and they've examined it every which way, with all these different new computer systems and the stride and everything, that I've heard that's what they captured was not contrived. It was real.
No, it was 100% real. Absolutely. It had muscle movement. It had muscle injury in the way that it walked in its leg. There was an actually injured to one of its muscles on the back of its leg because of the way the muscle flexed when it walked. I mean, it was just, they ran that thing through all kinds of analysis, and no one has ever been able to debunk it. And you know why? Because it was real. That's why you can't debunk it. And, there are certain things that, you see that you just know is BS. And it gets harder and harder with CGI, and now with AI and everything else.
But this was prior to CGI.
God, this was before Planet of the Apes. I mean,
that's right. It was.
The people in Hollywood didn't even know their best makeup artists couldn't put something like that together, But I mean, it was just there's just certain things that ring true. Like when I was young, my brother lived out on Long Island. He lived in Amityville, right? And he had a bunch of friends that would go ghost hunting. He was actually would go out with Han Holzer's right hand man, and they would use Han Holzer's psychic Ethel. Well, one time I was out on the island. I slept over out there. I was in my teens because we were going to like a motocross thing out on the island the next day. Slept over, went to the motocross thing, and then my brother said, "You want to go to the Amityville Horror House? You know, I got to call up my friends. We'll go do an investigation." And I was always a photography guy, you know. Even as a kid, I was a shutterbug, you know. And I wasn't, you know, at this point, I wasn't even in college for photography. I was just getting into high school. And I said, yeah, let's go. And we jumped in. My brother had this old Ford station wagon, and I jumped in the back of the wagon. You know, when they pulled the seat up in the back, like in the far back, that faced out the back window. You know.
Yes.
I'm sitting in the back because all his friends are in the front, and my brother says, "Okay, you're going to be the cameraman tonight." I said, "Okay." And when we pulled, as we started getting closer to the Amityville Horror House, I was feeling dread. The feeling of dread was just coming over me like, you know what, this is a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't go there, you know? And then when we pulled into the driveway, every fiber of my being was telling me, jump out of this car and run back, you know, run back to the house. Well, so when we got there and everybody looked at it, everybody's like, "Oh man, this is the Amityville Horror House." I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going in." And my brother's like, "What do you mean? You're my photographer." I'm like, "Here's the camera, bro. I'm not going in." You know, like I got a bad vibe about this place. It's got like bad mojo attached to it. And I said, I don't even want to be on the property, to be honest with you. And my brother's like, you're a big tough guy. You're not afraid of anything. I was like, "Frank, there's something here that's just that I can't beat up. I'm not going in, you know."
Let's face it, even before, you know, when they killed that, they slaughtered that whole family in there.
Yeah.
Okay. That was pretty gruesome. And I mean, people could say, okay, you know what? It was that this guy was doing drugs and he was messed up on his head and, you know, whatever. You know, and it sounded like that family had some dysfunctional stuff going on.
Yeah, the family was definitely dysfunctional. The father was really a hard ass, and he beat people, and it was a tough. But they had moved out there to make a better life for themselves.
Well, then I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know, but I'm thinking, did something take that guy over? You know that he passed away in 2021.
Yeah,
Butch DeFeo. And I'm thinking, you know, sometimes I always wonder, despite, you know, all these circumstances that were pretty bad, it makes you think, you know, did something take a hold of him to make him go to that extreme?
I absolutely believe that he was under the influence of something demonic, because you got to remember when you come from an abusive family, you're depressed, then you add drugs and alcohol on top of it. Now you've become a beacon for dark things, because it's easy for them to take you over and convince you to kill yourself so they could take your soul, right? And I believe that that's exactly what happened. Now, whether it happened at the old house when they got, or whether it was something dormant there on a property that came to life when he came there, I don't know.
Unfortunately, you know, I know it sounds kind of like fatalistic, but you know, some of those things follow families and people around. You know that, right?
Well, yeah, they're ever since I met Miss Aida.
I was gonna say you read my mind,
curses and stuff. You know what I mean?
No, it's, you know, something was going on from before, and maybe when you said they moved, like trying to like, hey, fresh start. Well, maybe something went with him though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there was just something dormant on that property, and he moved in. He had the right energy for that thing to come alive and attach itself to him. And, you know, I'm not making an excuse for him slaughtering his family. You know,
oh no, absolutely not.
He admitted he did that. You know, but you know, it wasn't. It was because it was something that made him do it, but he did it. You know, obviously it was his hand that killed his whole family. But there's no, you know, and I think that a lot of times I had this conversation with a woman the other day who's a nurse, and she said, you know, I was talking to her, and I was like, you know, I think a lot of people who are diagnosed as schizophrenics
Mm-hmm.
have attachments to them.
Yes, they do. They do.
And the doctors don't want to believe in the supernatural or the paranormal or whatever you want to call it. And they give it a nice name like schizophrenia, and they put them on medication to try to control it. But I believe that, you know, some of those people, a small percentage, say 10%, if they were to have a deliverance or an exorcism, they would be fine. They wouldn't need any medication, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's just
Sometimes
one man's
they
opinion.
have some type of mental illness, but it's aggravated really. I mean, I guess from being from how's this from being having that mental illness, whatever it is, to you know how they end up doing these horrible things as far as killing
Horrible
family
things.
members and decapitations, and you're like, oh my
Yes,
God.
absolutely, yes.
I think that's the one where it pushes them into committing acts like that versus somebody that's mentally ill, like you said, and maybe they don't take their meds and you know whatever. Then all of a sudden they do these horrific things that you see, you know, you read about and you see in the news, and that's where I think sometimes the attachment part comes in, like you said, the attraction's there, and maybe this person is easier to manipulate. Where
No, it's absolutely, yeah. I think these demons are just hanging around, waiting for somebody that they can attach itself to, who's weak mentally, and you know that they can take advantage of and do their bidding. And look, in the end, the goal is for you to kill yourself so they can get your soul. Right?
sure,
They try
they're always
I mean,
looking for.
I've been watching a lot of these murder mystery shows lately. I've been kind of gotten away from the paranormal, so I started watching, and there's so many people that they interview that say, yeah, you know, I had a voice in my head telling me, kill this one, kill this one, kill that one, kill yourself.
Right.
This, you know what I mean? And I think
right, that and that's the thing. That's the part. It's not only some of them that they have suicidal ideations. It's the ones that do those either murder suicide kind of deals where you know, yeah, sometimes they kill family members, but sometimes they'll just kill random people that really they don't even know.
No,
And it's just on my way out, I'm gonna cause as much grief as I can.
Yeah, it's just they're for the key word is chaos. They're there to create chaos in society, you know, and try to cause chaos, and that's it. That's what they're there for. That's what these demons are there for. And you know, people can believe what they want, but I've learned over the years doing this stuff, I've gotten more sensitive. I've never claimed to be psychic by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always had gut feelings. And
of course.
I've been around a lot of psychics lately, and they're all of a sudden everybody wants to read me, and I never asked anybody for a reading in my life, right? You know, because I'm pretty good where I am in my life. I know and I, you know, I had this one guy telling me, oh, do you hear voices? Oh, you're clairaudient, or you're clairvoyant. Do you see images? And yeah, I see an image. Sometimes I touch a wall, you know, and you touch things. So then you're doing psychometry. You know, I don't know what all of this stuff is called, but because I just do it, and I see an image of something. Like the other night, I was out at an investigation, and the building we were in had no, as far as the historian was there, no connection to the Underground Railroad. Right. But I touched the foundation, which was made out of rock, because the building was made in the 1700s. I touched the foundation, and then I touched what looked like a barn door. Door looked as old as the building. And the image I got was Underground Railroad, you know? Okay. And I didn't say anything to anybody because, you know, I don't claim to be a psychic. But then this woman who was there, who is a psychic, she had the same experience, and we're all sitting around a table at the end of the night, and with John Zaffis and everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And I reached out. I just spoke up. I said, "Listen, you two guys are psychics. You know, I know you guys are the real deal." I said, "Did you get any feeling?" I said, "No." I said to the girl, the historian, I said, "Is there any history of this house being involved with the Underground Railroad?" And then the woman who's the psychic said, "Why did you say that?" You know? And I was like, this, I was downstairs and something told me to touch the rocks. I touched the rock and then I touched the door and I had this image in my mind's eye. And that's what she says, oh my God, Al, I did the same thing in the same area and I got the same image. But according to the historian, the house was never used but the town itself did have locations that were being used for the Underground Railroad.
You know what? Sometimes those places are not used. How can I say it? They're not used so much that it becomes known later on historically, but they were used. But of course, let's face it, the Underground Railroad was very, very secret.
Yes. And someone could have hid out there at any point in time. Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't used extensively and nobody ever knew about it. Like everybody surrounding it knew how to keep their mouth shut. And then it just faded. Like nobody ever knew it. There was nobody to say, but that doesn't mean it was never used.
Right. Or it could have just been used that one time that I seen that image. They had to move these people out of the house that they normally use.
Right. Exactly.
And just hide them there. Yeah. It was funny too, because that particular night, I decided to do all old school stuff. Right.
Okay.
Said I'm tired of all the ITC stuff. I'm going strictly old school. And everybody else there, all the investigators that were there, were all strictly ITC, And I'm talking to John Zaffis and we're hanging out and we're BSing. And everybody's got all these cases and cases of IT stuff. Boy. And I got this little backpack,
There you go. It's called the dungeon approach, okay? The dungeon approach.
What do you got in that backpack? And I pulled out my quartz crystal pendulum and my dowsing rods and my compass. I had a 35 millimeter camera. I had a Polaroid camera. I had some little jingle bells, I went around the house hanging up the jingle bells and taking pictures with the Polaroid and the 35 millimeter. And I'll tell you, there was 2 rooms in the whole house that had the crazy energy. There was a sun room that the energy was just very, I don't want to say negative, but unwelcoming. Okay. And I what I did with my dowsing rods is I painted the front of them with glow paint, right?
Oh, really?
So when you're filming in UV or IR and the light hits the paint, it lights up. So in the dark, you can see the dowsing rods spinning like helicopter tops,
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then I went in. Well, they were going to use in the living room. They were going to use a table to put these 2 haunted dolls on, right?
Okay.
And the table was facing north. So I got my compass. I put it on the center of the table, and it said facing north. Okay. Now the guy came out with the haunted dolls, and I put it in front of one doll, and according to the compass in front of this little doll, east was north. So then I slid the compass to the other side of the table. I didn't do anything special with it, just slid it across and put it in front of the other doll. Now, no matter where I put this compass, it should have always read north was facing me.
Exactly.
Yes. So I put it in front of the other doll, and the other doll says east or west is north. And everybody's like, what the hell is going on? And it's like, this is why I go old school.
Yes.
So then at one point we were filming, and I had the quartz crystal pendulum out, and I was talking to this one little doll, Gretchen, I think her name was. And I was like, Gretchen, if there's anything attached to you, spin it clockwise. And it did. Okay. And I said, stop it, Gretchen, stop the pendulum. And she did. Then I said, spin it counterclock. And she did. So then I went over to the other doll whose name was Bella, and I did the same exact thing. Now, the guy who owns her is standing off behind me to my left, about 45-degree angle. And I have this other guy, Rich, over my left shoulder filming all of this. And Rich says to the doll, after it does the same thing, right, stop, left, Rich says to the doll, if you know who your owner is, go swing towards your owner. And don't you think that pendulum swung at a 45-degree angle to its owner? And the guy who owned the doll said, this is amazing because this validates that both of these dolls have something attached to them.
Let me ask you, what is the story of Bella and Gretchen?
Honestly, I didn't bother to ask I just
But what is it
from
that they
what
have some type of attachment
yeah,
or
from what I
something?
understand, Tim Dalton, he's an investigator out of Connecticut. He's the one who owns them. From what I understand, when I talked to Tim on the last visit, because I've done a bunch of investigations with Tim, and this was the second time I had met John Zaffis, and Tim told me that he was browsing in an antique shop,
Right.
and he got to talking to the owner of the shop, and the owner says, "There's something wrong with this doll. Every time anyone comes near it, nobody ever buys it." And yada yada yada. So Tim said, "Okay, I'll take it. You know, I'm a paranormal investigator. I'll buy it." And then he was at a different antique shop in Connecticut, and he came across Bella, and they was like, "You know, I don't know what the deal is with this doll, but every time we put it somewhere, stuff around it gets moved." You
And he's
know,
like, wait a minute.
so Tim was like, "Okay, I'll buy her." You know, not that there's anything dark or negative attached to
Right.
it. There's just energy attached to it, and could be little kids' energy. I'm not
How
sure.
are they? Are they like one of these really old dolls, or are they more modern?
I would say Bella is probably set from the 70s, and
Mm-hmm.
Gretchen maybe from the 50s. You know,
Okay. All right.
and so then we went downstairs into the basement, and the basement. This place used to be a funeral parlor at one time,
Oh
and
boy.
the basement still had the sinks there that they did the embalming sinks.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm down there. I'm down there all by myself. I like to when I go out on these investigations with other teams. I like to head out by myself and do my own thing, and
Right.
then see what I get, and then come back with other people, different energy, see what happens. You know. And I'm down there, and I swear to God, I'm walking around in the basement, and I was hanging the little jingle bells up and stuff, you know, and I had the dowsing around, and I'm walking around, and I felt like I was on the bow of a boat with big swells. I was going like this, right? And
Oh.
then this woman, Susan, came down from one of the other teams, and she's very sensitive too. And I'm standing at the far back of the room, and she's walking over to me. And as she's walking like this. I go, "Susan, what's wrong?" She goes, "I don't know. This whole basement is shaking." She goes, "I can't walk straight." And
Right. Right. Like,
I said, "I understand because I felt the same thing. I came down here, you know." And what I found on later that night is that two women were down there investigating. I had left around 10 o'clock because my back had stiffened up. But they stayed late, these people. And what I found out the next day was two of the girls who went down there from on other teams were doing investigating, and they both got choked at the same time.
what?
Yeah, there
Down
was
in that
definitely.
that same area down there with the embalming, the prep the bodies and
Yeah,
stuff?
down in the basement. Yeah, yeah, they were
Oh.
down in the basement. I think everybody else was up on the third floor, and they were down there by themselves, and they got choked. Yeah, and we did through the plasma box. We did find out that there were two kids who were buried in the front yard underneath the oak tree. They were twins. They were 10 years old. They gave us their names, and they gave us the names of their parents. Apparently the father was a reverend or something to that effect,
Okay.
and he was very strict, and he beat both kids to death
Oh
and
my
buried them in
God.
the front yard, and then he planted an oak tree on top of them. And this oak tree is huge, number one, and then it forks off in two different directions. And I'm like, I wonder if this one is for the boy and this one is for the girl, you know. But the energy around that oak tree outside was just off the charts, off the charts.
And was it ever was it always a funeral home, or was it ever like a because
It was a
I know
funeral. It
sometimes
was.
these funeral directors would live,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They lived there. I'm sure they lived up on the third floor. Um, it was a funeral parlor. It was a bar. I
there
think it
you
was
go.
even an inn at one time because it's a really big home. There's a lot of
Okay.
rooms, you know. I
Uh-huh.
think it's
Uh-huh.
now it's a museum. It's an art museum now, you know.
Okay.
But yeah. But like I said, the only two rooms I felt anything in
Mhm.
like was that sunroom
Right.
And I even asked it with the dowsing rod. I said, cross for yes, open for no. And I said, are you happy? Are we here? And it went no. And I said, do you want us to leave? And it said yes. And I left. I said, okay, I'll leave then. You know, I
It's
don't
like, I
want to.
get it.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to disrespect you in your home. You know what I mean? So, but
And
like
the
I
reason
said,
why I asked you is that sometimes, I mean, besides the obvious of being a funeral home, when you have places like, an inn, a tavern, what, I mean, you can have a cast of hundreds in there as to who it could be,
yes, yes, and
besides a funeral home.
we were discussing that we're all around this big round table, like we're doing like a round table thing towards the end of the night, and we're all talking, and I was talking to John and Tim and Robert, and everybody was there, and we were discussing there are so many different levels to this place because of all the different time periods it's seen,
Right.
from the 1700s till now. How many different things has it been, and how many people have come through here, even to this day, with the artists that are working upstairs in the studios, creating with their energy and their art. They're bringing different energy in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely,
it was. If my back didn't stiffen up, I would have stayed later. But we were sitting on those metal folding chairs.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's hard. That's hard.
after about an hour, my back was done, and I said I knew if I didn't leave right then and there, I probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed the next day. So I hightailed it out of there. But they stayed till like 4 o'clock in the morning and stuff. But we've done a lot of investigations since the last time we talked. I've done a lot of cleansing since the last time we talked. Trying to actually working on 2 exorcisms right now, which is above my pay grade. And
I was going to ask you, was the last time I had sent you somebody, you said no, and we sent it over to Miss Aida, like, okay, this is your department.
Yeah, no, well, what I do is people call me in. I actually used Miss Aida recently on a cleansing. All right.
Okay.
The woman was seeing shadow figures in the house and yada yada yada. And this woman is very sensitive. I actually cleaned her old condo. Right, she had stuff in her old condo that I cleaned. I cleansed for her, which were actually the first condo I cleaned for. I was told they were elementals. Okay. But in this one, this is a townhouse now. She's living there. She's married. She has a husband. They're living in this beautiful townhouse. And she's having all kinds of issues. And she's getting all kinds of crazy EVPs and all kinds of photographs on her security system. And she's being scratched. And she's finding, she's getting all this crazy stuff. Like, she's got a thing underneath her in her cabinet where all her bobby pins are, like this plastic thing. And she'd wake up in the morning and that thing would be filled with water. Like, how does it get water in here? Yeah, And I went in and I did a preliminary investigation. And her husband is like a collect. He likes to collect stuff. Like, he brought home all kinds of stuff. He found a weight set. He found a weight set on the side of the road. He brought it home to work out with in the garage. And there was energy attached to those weights.
Anything, yeah. It could be anything.
And she had some of her mother's stuff. Her mother had just passed, and her mother's wig had so much energy attached to it. It was insane. Oh my God, it was.
I can imagine.
Then she had a portrait over a fireplace of this gypsy woman who looked exactly like her mother. Okay, and when her mother was young, and that portrait had energy attached to it. So I said, okay. So then her husband started coming home with all these little knickknacks and stuff, right? And this woman said, what's going on here? And he's wearing all these different charms. And then he came home with a shirt with all these different symbols on it.
She must have been like, what was his explanation?
Right. So he was just saying he was finding them because his particular job, he goes from location to location to location. And he finds trinkets and stuff,
Right.
And so she calls me up one day and I take pictures of everything. When he's not there, he's working. And I send them to Miss Aida. I said, Are these? She thinks that he's into like Santariga or something, right?
Right.
And Miss Aida says, no, it's just the opposite. These are all protection things, not negative things. And she goes, he's having an affair. That's what and
Miss Aida, Miss Aida.
And this trinkets and all this stuff is being given to him by some woman. So she confronts her husband. She confronts her husband, and he admits they. Turns out, listen to this. After me and Miss Aida cleanse this house, right? We do rituals. We cleanse the house. We have to go back because now her husband admits to having an affair, and Miss Aida says he's got a love spell put on him. Somebody put a love spell on him, right?
Oh boy, here we go.
She's talking to him via, like we're talking now, right? Zoom, Skype, whatever, FaceTime. And she's like, after he leaves, she turns to me, she goes, he's got a love spell on him. Someone put a love spell on him. So now we got to get him to agree to go through a whole ritual to break it, right?
Right.
Okay. So we go through this guy, and you know, these rituals, they're not for the faint of heart. You know, you have to do them every day for like 2 weeks straight, and there's 1,000,001 things you have to do. And but this is what you have to do if you want to break a spell, right? So he goes through it. We break the love spell. He's back in love with his wife. Everything is good. All of a sudden, he comes home one day, and he's like nasty. And she calls me up, and she says, Al, he is so nasty. I mean, he doesn't even look like himself anymore. He looks like somebody else.
That's not good.
So I go down and I get Miss Aida on the phone, and we start talking. We're interviewing him, and then he leaves, and I got to go to work, you know. And he goes to work, and Miss Aida says, same person who put the love spell on him just put a curse on him because she's pissed that he's not in love with her anymore. So now she cursed him. So now we got to go through a whole other ritual to break the curse. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you.
We had to convince him, which is hard to convince somebody that they got something on them. You know what I mean? Because they don't realize their change. They don't see the change. You know. And so eventually we convinced them, you know, that we're not lying to him. You know, we weren't lying to you about the first one. We're not lying to you about the second one. And we got him to go through a whole different kind of ritual, which was even a lot more complicated than the first one. And we got through that. And then we, you know, Miss Aida sealed the place, and she, you know, she told the woman what to buy he could wear, because he's got to go to work. And this woman works where he works.
Okay, so you answered my, because I was gonna, where are they crossing paths? That she's still being able to interfere in his life.
She works in the office, and he works out on the road. He goes in the office every morning, gets his things to where he's got to go for the day. And so Miss Aida had to give him all kinds of trinkets and stuff to wear when he's at work, so that this woman will, even if she tries, she won't be able to whatchamacallit. And so now that was her. Then I get another phone call from this other woman, and she says, I'm getting these EVPs. They're scaring the hell out of me. I'm seeing dark stuff. And she's showing me photographs of stuff out her back window. And it looks like a ghost. I mean, a full body apparition, but with like a long flowing robe or something, looking in her back window, right? And she's got orbs flying around. So we get her, if she sends me her EVPs, she's being scratched, all this stuff. So she sends me the EVP, we run it through our software, we slow it down, and it actually says to this woman, I'm going to kill you. Kill you. Then it says her name. Then
just in case she didn't know, she was like, was that meant for me? Yeah.
Then another woman's voice comes in and says, no, you're not. And then we hear a man's voice again saying, kill you. So now I'm trying to schedule, called up Larry Elwards. He's a father, Larry Elwards. His wife, Debbie, Chamberlain Edwards. She's a psychic. He's a demonologist.
Yes,
So
I know. I know who you're.
I called them up and I told them about it because they're good friends of mine and they've done favors for me in the past, you know. And I was talking to them. And it turns out when I was talking to John Zaffis the first time I met him about them, John goes, you know, Larry's my cousin. And I was like, what?
Oh boy.
He's like, no way. He goes, would you mind if I come along? I go, would I mind? I said, look, I'm just going to bring you there, drop you off and leave. I don't have anything to do with this stuff, you know. It's above my pay grade, you know. And then Deb said to me, listen, Al, if it's safe enough for you to stay and film, I'll let you know. You know what I mean? I won't put you in harm's way because you probably should experience this at least once.
Let me ask you, when did this start happening? Was there like a triggering event, or did they just move into this house, or what happened?
No, what happened? They moved into this home and they gutted it from head to toe.
Oh.
And when they gutted it, all hell. She showed me a photograph. She's walking. She has like a little patio and then a little yard. And behind her yard, she has woods. And she's walking her dog. She's got like a Rottweiler. So she's walking her dog in the woods. And she's taking a picture, a selfie of her and her dog.
Okay.
And standing behind her looks like a Minuteman from the 1700s.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a Minuteman with the same garb and the long gun, you know, everything. And then she's showing me all these pictures of stuff. Looks like there's a Dogman out her looking in the woods, looking in at her. Then there was these little things. They looked like they were mixed between raccoons and something else in the trees, looking in. And then in her house, she had so many orbs. I mean, they would fly right up to the camera, stop, look at the camera, then boom, go this way. And one time the camera actually was filming. The camera was rotating. She was rotating the camera from her bedroom upstairs. And the TV was off. And the orbs were flying in and out of the TV. I mean, hundreds of orbs. I said, you know, your TV is a portal. This is how they're getting in. And she started freaking out.
What did I buy? Does she know any history at all of the place or no?
It's just, you know, the town itself is very historic. You know, it has a lot of history during the Revolutionary War and, you know, the native French Indian Wars and stuff like that. And I think it was just a combination of tearing that house up and then starting fresh. And man, there was so much stuff. And then Deb tells me, because she says, you know what, if they can't come, I don't care because I'm selling this house and I'm getting the hell out of here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but, you know, I said, but if it's attached to you, it doesn't matter if you sell the house.
Right.
And Deb says, Al, I don't know how to tell you this. Deb was reading her through me. She said, like, I'm a conduit. And she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but this woman, she goes, don't use the word exorcism. Use the word deliverance because exorcism scares people.
That's a very loaded word, yeah.
Yeah, she said, because not only is this stuff engulfed in her home, but she's got something dark attached to her. She needs a deliverance. She goes, doesn't matter where she moves to, she's always going to have stuff attached to her.
Yeah. In other words, there might be something there, or maybe on the land, like you said.
Yeah, and I don't know what she
wherever
did.
she goes, it's going to walk with her.
I don't know what she did in her youth. You know what I mean? She may have been into black magic and stuff like that. Who knows? You know, I don't know.
You know what? And I've heard of that, Al. I've heard of people doing, you want to call it, when they're young, they intentionally get involved in the occult, or sometimes they're just stupid. You know, they hang out in the wrong places and. Then, you know,
all it takes is one Ouija board session with your girlfriends on a sleepover. That's all it takes for something to come true, attach itself to you, and you never know it, you know?
Exactly. Well, you ask people, we were into the occult, and they'll look at you and go, no. And then, but, you know, when they start thinking about it, it's like, no, okay, I'm not asking you if you were in a coven. I'm asking you, you know, like, because they take it to the extreme.
Right,
if anything, I got anything attached, it's like, no, I'm not saying you were like a practitioner every day, you know, whatever. But sometimes exactly like what you just described.
I mean, And Debbie says that this woman has got psychic ability too, and this woman's afraid of her own shadow. She wants nothing to do with her psychic ability, and she wants nothing to do with the paranormal. But the paranormal wants something to do with her. You know what I mean? So
well, she's bound to be disappointed, it seems. But yeah, well, let's see what happens because yeah, like exactly like what you said. Yeah, maybe there is something there, but that still leaves her. The same thing. If she's gonna stay there, they take care of her. But if there's something there in that
yeah,
piece of land,
I mean, if she gets the deliverance and they cleanse her, and then they cleanse the home and the property, and they put a
sure.
boundary up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever heard this. I did a cleansing recently, and I used I don't know if you know her, Katie Turner from the Travel Channel. Katie, she does like my haunted house and stuff.
Yes.
Well, Katie's out of Canada, and she's an amazing psychic. And my psychic was going through back surgery, so I couldn't use her. So I called Katie, and
Okay.
Katie told me something. I mean, we did. It was a long, drawn out cleansing and everything because the house was humongous, and I was there by myself, and I had to put the homeowners to work with me. But long story short, Katie told me to use something to seal the property, to bind it with, that I'd never heard of before. She told me to grind up red brick and use the red brick dust to seal the property with.
Interesting.
And the crazy thing about it is this guy had like 1,000 red bricks in his backyard.
You know what? I'm going to tell you, and I hadn't heard it. There's a Father Ripperberger. I'm trying to pronounce his name the right way. Okay. He's a very well-known exorcist in the Catholic Church. Okay. And he was giving examples where he says that people should take, those salt licks, the ones that people put out for deer.
For deer, yep.
Get them blessed and then bury them in the perimeters or in the four corners of your property. And by the way, this is coming from a Catholic priest who's an exorcist.
Right. Yeah.
Ripperberger. That's how you pronounce his name. He's and I was listening to that. And I was like, man, I'd never thought of that. As far as, using the salt, of course, and you get it blessed. And as far as to do it for your, not for the house, but for the actual perimeter of your property. If you have a yard, that is.
Yeah, I mean, we that particular cleansing, this family, I'm not a mirror guy, okay? It takes a lot for me to aim my camera into a mirror to take a picture. I don't know why. I've never had a bad experience with mirrors, but it takes a lot for me to do it. And every now and then I feel compelled to do it, so I do it. This particular family had 6 million mirrors in the house. I swear to God, they had 6 million. And they had one wall in the bathroom that was nothing but mirrors. So I walk into their bedroom. Now, Katie is on the phone. We're doing a FaceTime, and Katie's reading them, right? And she's telling them that they had a child who died young. I know any of this information. I'm doing a history on these people, and yada, yada, yada. And there was an old lady who lived in this room, and your wife is causing all the poltergeist activity because her energy is chaotic. And she said, what was the word she used? You and your son are indigo children. I guess, okay. And I'm gone. She's blowing me away by what she's saying. And then she's like, we walk into their bedroom, and the energy buckled my knees in there. I had to sit down on the bed. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then I turned and I look, and they both have full-length mirrors, like a his and hers, but they're facing each other.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, you're creating a portal in your bedroom with these 2 mirrors. Like, turn them the other way. Put blankets over them. So then Katie tells me something that I never knew before. She said, you know how to test a mirror if it's a portal? I said, I got no idea. And she goes, walk up to it and put your finger up against it. If there's space between your finger and the mirror, that mirror is a portal. If there's no space, it's not. And I went over to the first mirror, which was his. And I put
Okay.
my finger up against it, and there was no space. But when I went to his wife's mirror, there was space on it.
Ooh.
Okay, so now we knew this was the mirror that was creating the portal. Then I went into the bathroom. Like I said, the whole wall was one giant mirror. And I touched that mirror and there was space there. And I had to touch every single mirror in this house, which was
I was like, wait a minute. It's like, what is he doing?
This
like,
house, when I tell you this house was humongous, it was humongous. And I told the guy and his son, I said, look, I'm putting you guys to work because if I have to do this by myself, I'll be here for a month, you know? And I went to every single mirror in that house, but those were the only two that were portals. So we were okay. So then we started with the cleansing. We started up in the attic. We work our way down. Katie said, it was funny because not only Katie, but I had another psychic friend of mine read the property, and they both said the same thing.
Okay.
Kids playing with Ouija boards, but not from their house. 2 houses over. But they didn't play with it in the house. Behind the client's house is an old Revolutionary War cemetery. They played with the Ouija board in the cemetery.
Yes.
And they brought the guy back who owned all this property, who was like a colonel or a major during the Revolutionary War.
Oh, boy.
And all this property that was all farmland one time, which is all developed now, he owned it all. Okay. And the neighbor behind him on the other side of the cemetery says she sees the colonel walk through her house every night at the same time, like a residual haunt. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Never notices them. But when he goes into the client's house, he slaps the wife, the 2 daughters, and the daughter-in-law. He doesn't like women. Apparently he abused women. Okay. He doesn't like the end. Now this guy told me, you know, at one time he had his father. He's got a beautiful basement. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. And he had his father living in the basement at one point. And the father went and spent one night there and said, "I'd rather sleep in the driveway in my car. Something doesn't want me down there." So then the father moved out. And his brother moved in for a month. And the brother said the same thing. "I'm not sleeping downstairs. I'll sleep up here." So I went downstairs and I felt there was something down there. And I looked with all the ITC devices to see if I could see anything. And I couldn't see anything. But I was feeling something like was hiding from me. Like if I went to the one side of the room, it would go to the other. Okay. And at one point I said, "Hey, listen, I'm not leaving here tonight until you leave. There's the door out to the back. You're more than welcome to go right now. But I'm telling you, when I leave here tonight, you will be gone, right?" And the client is sitting next to me, and we seen the shadow run across the wall, like towards out the back door.
Wow.
And the client freaked out. He was like, "Oh my God, the shadow! Did you see that shadow?" I'm like, "Yeah, calm down. I seen it. Relax." You know. He's like, it just ran out the back door. I'm gonna go shut that back door." I said, "Listen, you can shut that back door. It still can get it. You know what I mean? What we got to do is we got to cleanse the house and seal the property to keep it out." Right. So he's freaking out. His son is freaking out. But what they did was they tried to do a cleansing with a smudging.
Right.
But when they smudged, they didn't open any windows. They didn't open any doors. So the thing had nowhere to go. So it hid. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it hid I must have hid in the basement downstairs in the room where the furnace was or something, you know?
Yes.
So I said, when we did it, we had all the windows open, all the doors open. He had a room. He had a room set up for his 2 granddaughters, twin little granddaughters, like 3 years old each, right? It was called the Barbie room, okay? And they had like a Barbie tent in there and Barbie playhouse and all these Barbie toys, right, for these 2 little girls. They wouldn't go in that room because they said they seen a little boy in there with no eyes.
Okay? Holy crap. Yeah, let me tell you. I was about to say, little girls not going in there with Barbies. Is there something there? They're like,
So the day I was there doing the cleansing, his daughter pulls up with the kids. Now the kids are in the car sleeping. The daughter said, I'm just going to run in to give my brother something. Okay. She doesn't know what we're doing. She doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, right?
Right.
And we're burying. Katie told me to buy these certain stones and bury them on the four corners of the property to bind the property, right? We're going to bind the property line, and then we're going to put a barrier up around the house, right?
Right.
And so we did that. We were buried. She told me what stones to get. It was like three or four different stones. I bought a whole bunch of them. We buried them on all four corners. So while we're doing this, we're out in the backyard, and this guy's got a beautiful home. His daughter comes out. You know, she's just ran in and ran out, and she runs out and she says, "What the hell did you guys do in there?" And when we go, "Why?" She goes, "The whole house feels different." And I was like, okay, well, and he goes, yeah, we're cleansing the house. She goes, well, I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing the right thing. And I was all that validated, because I couldn't feel any energy, because I had so much residual energy on me from being there for all those. I couldn't feel a change of energy. So
but somebody like her that's probably accustomed to coming into the house and feeling certain things, she probably realized I'm not feeling it or something.
Right.
Noticeable.
And she felt it immediately, because when I tell you she was in the house for like a minute, she was just running in and running out. And the minute she was in there, she felt that the house was different, which made me feel good, because it validated my stuff. I couldn't get out of there fast enough, because I was so burnt out from being there all day that after we did the binding ritual with the ground up red bricks. Right. I jumped in my car and drove home as fast as I could, right? I get home and the client calls me and he goes, Al, you ran out of here so fast. You left your bag under the table with all your equipment in it. I was like, oh, man, I got to go back now tomorrow. I don't want to go back. I'm so burnt out. This house burnt me out so much. But I said, okay, I'll swing by tomorrow and pick it up. So in the meantime, his daughter shows up that night with the twins. And what they usually do is when they walk in the front door into the foyer, the twins are always holding, the twins are always holding hands. And they look around, they look up and they look around and they say, pop, pop, put on the lights, all the lights. And they walked in the house, they were holding hands, they looked around and they looked at each other. And they said, they go, Papa, house is different. And they skipped off into the playroom, the Barbie room, and they played. And I was like, man, that is the best validation you could actually ever tell me. Because those little kids were wide open to it. You know what I mean?
Well, no, they don't fake it. They don't,
They're not faking it. Absolutely not. And they were so petrified. He goes, Al, they held hands and they skipped into the Barbie room and they were in there all night playing. He said, I blew my mind. He goes, so then, Katie told me to tell his wife to make get a bunch of quartz crystal stones, set them up in the yard facing east. And meditate in there every day for like 15 minutes. She goes, even if she does it 5 minutes a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, this will help her bring her energy down and transfer it out into the universe. This way, the house is not going crazy. The cabinets are not opening. The drawers are not flying open. Things are not flying off the mantelpiece, because it was her chaotic energy that was making sense. And I felt it the first time I went in there. I met her. I said hello. We had coffee and cake, and we were talking, because the first time it's just a meet and greet, and the whole time I'm sitting there talking to him, I'm thinking, oh my God, this chick's energy is so chaotic that it's freaking me out.
People don't realize there's people that even if they're sitting down at the table, they still got this energy that you pick up on, that you're like, it's exhausting being around you.
It wasn't like there was negative or dark.
No, I know.
It was just chaotic. And the crazy thing about it, even when she's not home, she can create this poltergeist activity. If she's thinking about what's going on in the house, what I mean?
Yes.
What are the kids up to? What's my husband doing,
Yes.
And her thinking about it makes the whole house go crazy.
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
and I really didn't expect his wife to do what I said because of her chaotic energy, but lo and behold, she actually did. Okay, and he was telling me she's doing it, and the house is getting better. And then one day, him and his son, who are indigo children, go out
Okay.
there and make an ass out of his wife and his mother, and she stopped doing it. And now he
Oh,
calls me up and he says the house is out of control again. I said, you know what? That's on you. Why did you make an ass out of your wife? She was doing the right thing. The
right.
house was nice and quiet, and you and your son got to go pick. Oh, we were just breaking her chops. Yeah, but you were breaking her chops over something that was really important for her to do. And now she
Exactly.
won't do it because you made an ass out of her. And now your house is chaotic and you want me to come back? I said, no, I'm out. I'm not coming back to your house.
Right. Like you already know what you need to do.
I
And
was
then
there
what? Because everything, once they did that, everything then picked up again.
Well, just the what you will call it picked up again.
Right. All that crazy stuff,
chaotic energy.
type,
Yeah, the
type of activity.
stuff picked up again. Not the colonel never came back in, and no one's being slapped around, or there's no children with black eyes. I think it was the colonel. I think it was the colonel scaring the little kids. You know what I mean? And
they might have stirred something else up from that cemetery.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but none of that stuff is happening. But now he's got all this poltergeist activity, and he calls me up and he wants me to come, and I was like, dude, I spent the whole weekend at your house. It took me like 2 weeks to recover from the cleansing your house because it was so big, and I was there for 2 days.
Right, and you already know that she's the agent.
I'm not coming back. I said, this is on you. I said, you guys know what you need to do. You need to convince your wife and your mother to go back to that circle and start meditating again so she can release her chaotic energy into the universe, or let me
ask you something, Al. Did you, out of curiosity, did she ever have this even before as a child? This type of maybe telekinetic or kinetic stuff? Did you ever ask her about that?
Yeah, she did. She did.
She did,
and he did too as a kid. He did too.
Oh boy.
His mother was a psych. His mother had psychic abilities. She was from Scotland, and it was known in her village in Scotland that that family, whatever the last name was, had these gifts. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you put them both together.
Yeah, I know. Talk about like the people that get together. It's like, oh boy. Yeah. But there's some people that know how to handle that, but there's others that their personality is like what you describe about her.
And she doesn't want anything to do with the paranormal. She's dead. Again, this is another woman who has abilities, who's afraid. All right. And then him and his son are both indigo children. They don't want anything to do with it either. So you got 3 people who are very highly sensitive with abilities. Nobody wants anything to do with it, and their abilities are just like going crazy. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what it is that sometimes if she's got any type of mediumistic abilities, and I don't know, and this is just me guessing, you hear about this where she's gonna have discarnates attracted to her, hoping that they can communicate through her. So she better learn how to control that, because if she's gonna get visitors, no matter what.
And it's funny you mentioned visitors, because she told me that one day they have a big pool in the yard, and when the kids were small, the whole neighborhood used to be at her house using the pool, even if they weren't home, right? All the kids in the neighborhood. Well, one day she was cleaning in the living room, and she seen a shadow go past the window headed towards the backyard, and she just assumed it was one of the neighbor kids going to use the pool.
Right.
So she's listening and she's listening. She never heard anybody jump into the water. She never heard anybody pass the second window. It's like a window, and then there's a wall, and there's a window. So she's like, that's pretty weird. I know I seen somebody walk through. And like I said, this is this used to be farmland. This used to be all woods. And now they have these giant homes on huge amounts of property. Okay. The homes are not on top of each other, but you can see them all because they're all cleared out, right? And so she goes out and she looks out in the back patio. She doesn't see anybody. So she walks out to the edge of the house and she looks around the side and she says, Al, hand to God, there was a Sasquatch in my flower bed.
What?
Pulling out certain flowers. She says, have you ever heard of them pulling out these particular flowers? And I started laughing hysterical. I said, yes, they love those particular flowers. And if you have a bush with those flowers on it in your garden, but they will definitely come and take those flowers. She goes, it was absolutely crazy. She goes, it was like a 7-foot Sasquatch. She goes, and the vibe I got from it is that it was a young female. She felt that it was a female. So then the husband says to me one night, he says, you're not going to believe this, but I'm sleeping in the recliner. It's like 3:00 in the morning. He's sleeping in the recliner. TV is still on. And he hears bang against the house, like a car hit the house.
Right.
So he jumps up off the recliner. He's like, what the hell was that? He runs to the front door. He opens the front door, puts the sensor lights on. There's nobody there. So he goes to the back, puts the second, and he looks, and he says a Sasquatch again in the flower bed. And I think the Sasquatch was pissed because it was 3:00 in the morning. The lights were on, the TV was on, and she just wanted to get in and out. And so she slapped out. She said, so when it seen me peek around the corner, it took off running to the front of the house. I ran to the front of the house to see it. He goes, when I got to the front door, it stopped and it growled at me. He said it did something like it just went like screamed at him. He said,
so they've both seen it then.
He said when it screamed at me, he said I felt like all the hair on my head was flying backwards, like I was in front of a fan. He goes, I never felt anything that powerful before. He goes, I couldn't close the door fast enough.
I bet.
He goes, but when I opened up the shade to look at it, to see where, as it was running up the street. Now, this is the neighborhood with no street lights.
Okay.
As it's running up, it would run like 200-300 yards, turn around, look at his house, scream again, run, stop, scream again. And then every time it screamed, all the lights were going on and all the houses in the neighborhood. He said,
let me ask you, is that area eventually, what is it? It leads off in like to a wooded area or what?
That area is literally connected to one of my hotspots.
Oh,
yeah.
You're kidding.
And I said, I guarantee you that the ones I'm dealing with at my hotspot are probably the ones coming here, because this was all woods or farms at one time.
Yes.
And they've been coming through here for hundreds of years. You know what I mean? Right. And they were probably coming through when it was farms to get, cows or vegetables or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever
right.
Chickens, whatever they could get. Now that that's all gone, they're getting berries and apples off of trees and flowers, certain flowers that they really like a lot. And I was told that certain flowers are used for medicinal purposes, and certain flowers are used just for like a food source, because they're really sweet and whatever, they taste great or whatever. So yeah, it's crazy. So I was like, yeah, I go, my hotspot, my Sasquatch hotspot is literally down the street. He goes, yeah, he goes, it's funny you say that, because this guy is for someone who doesn't want anything to do with paranormal, he does a lot of research, right? And he's like, I researched that area, and that area's got a ton of Bigfoot sighting. And I said, yeah, maybe one time I'll take you to my hot spot, He goes, oh, okay. No. He goes, I'm not going in the woods at night looking for these things. He goes, you're nuts to go in there at night and associate with these things. I go, hey.
What? Well, after that experience, I don't blame.
I said, I have a good rapport with this family unit, and I've been going there for years, and nothing has ever happened to me. So,
Hey, let me... Al, and when you say a family unit, are we talking like mom, dad, like nuclear family kind of deal?
Yeah, I think it's a mom and dad and children and maybe aunts and uncles too. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I really do. I think they they have um, they have a home range over one of the ridges, which is down in a valley. It's really beautiful, green, plush valley, but it's hidden by ridges and mountains all around it. You know what I mean? And when I'm at the sacred site, which I call the sacred site, there's always someone up on the ridge, like a sentinel watching me. You know what I mean?
Really? So they got
And
lookouts, huh?
yeah, and then as I start doing my rituals to bring them in, whatever I'm doing that particular night, they'll come down. Sometimes it's just the sentry coming down to see what I'm doing. Sometimes it's just the adolescents creeping
Okay.
down because I put out all kinds of bells and whistles and stuff like that. You know.
Okay.
Sometimes it's the big guys that come down and surround us and want to know what's going on. You know.
Let me ask you,
Um,
do they leave or come back depending on the weather, or are they there year round?
No, they're here year round. But what I believe they have is I think they have like a giant like circumference, which is their
Mhm.
home range, right? And what they
Okay.
do is they travel that circumference during the course of the year. They may only be at certain points of the year at certain locations for maybe 2 or 3 months. Um, my hot spot, I do know they're there during the summer, but I have the best um, success with them in the fall.
Okay.
After the fall, I don't know if they're further north or east or west or where they are south. But I believe they work in a circumference like that. This way they don't kill off all the food at any one
Okay.
particular location. You know what I mean? And I
Okay.
also think it also has to do with with the food source that's in season at that time. You
Sure.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time. I was on a Bigfoot show the other night, and someone in the chat room asked me, what do you feed them? I said, first of all, I don't feed them. I give them trinkets. There's bells, whistles. They love squeaky toys like the dogs have and everything.
Uh-huh.
I was like, but if you're going to feed them, and I know people who feed them, I said, never feed them meat because they will come to your house looking for more. So
Oh
never feed
boy.
them meat. And I said, because I had a friend of mine who did that, and I told him, don't do it. He did it. They came to his house, banging on the side of his house looking for more.
Why? Because that meat, they were like, wow, this is great.
This is good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And then he had to switch over to like fruit. I always say, feed them no matter where you are in the United States. If you're up north, out west, out east, down south, feed them with stuff that they would find naturally in your area. Like
Right.
down in Florida, it would be grapefruits and watermelons and
Yeah. The
bananas and stuff
citrus, there's a
like
lot of
that.
citrus down
Yes,
here.
stuff like that. Up here, it's more apples and pears and
Yeah.
berries and stuff. A lot of nuts during the fall when all the trees let the nuts out. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
They harvest all those nuts and they use those nuts as a food source. You know what I mean?
Right.
But those nuts are only here in the fall, and I think that's what they're harvesting when they're at my location during the fall on October and stuff. I think
Okay.
they're there for the nuts because the berries are all gone, unless they're actually hunting, deer or rodents, raccoons or stuff like that, which they could be.
Sure.
I think they're there mostly for the nuts. But like I said, always give them what they will find in your area that's natural to your area. Don't I said, and for whatever you do, don't give them Twinkies and yodels and shit like that. I said, look, I was
Right.
like,
Yes.
I go,
Little
listen.
Debbie.
I said, listen, everybody likes sweets. Me, no exception. But what happens if you're feeding this thing nothing but chocolate for
Right.
years and it gets a cavity? And then
Yes.
I come along thinking I'm going to have a nice encounter and it's got a terrible toothache and it rips my head off my shoulder. You
There
know
you
what I
go.
mean? Don't give them sweets. It's sweets. only sweets that are grown naturally in the wilderness, not chocolate and Twinkies and shit like that. Because I know people give them stuff like that,
Of course.
and like everybody else, they love the sweets too, but we don't know how their body processes that
Exactly. Yeah.
stuff.
About the only
Yeah,
thing I
so
could think of naturally occurring besides fruit is maybe honey,
yeah,
which is
honey,
just
they love honey, absolutely. Yeah, they love honey, absolutely. They love honey. Yeah, they do. So they do have a sweet tooth, but give it to them naturally. Yeah, if you want to leave them a jar of honey, I don't have a problem with that. You know
let me
what I
ask you
mean?
something, Al. I know that you've besides the do you have or have you heard of any sightings in your area in your neck of the woods about Mothman or any flying humanoids or anything like that?
No, I have never heard of anything, any flying humanoids in my area of the woods. What I did see recently, was it last September? I forgot when the stripers run in the Hudson River, but every year at a certain time, the stripers run up the Hudson River, and my
Right.
son-in-law is a big fish guy, and my
Okay.
son and I were out with him one year when the stripers were running, and I swear to God, there's 100 boats out on the Hudson River. Everybody's pulling in stripers like they're going out of style. My son-in-law got one. It was like 3 feet long, right?
Right.
And I seen a shadow go over the river because it was a beautiful sunny day. So I looked up to see what made that shadow because it was so big. I thought it was maybe somebody on a kite that jumped off the Palisades cliffs and was,
Uh-huh.
and it was a fucking thunderbird.
And what you must have been like, did you do like one of those like am I seeing what I'm seeing?
I slapped my son and my son-in-law and I said, "What's that?" And my son looked up and says, I don't see anything because he doesn't want to admit anything exists,
Oh, he's
right?
one of those.
And he goes, I don't see anything. And my son-in-law says, and my son-in-law's a hunter too, he looked up and he's like, I don't know what the hell that is. And I'm looking around at all these fishermen,
Right.
and there's boats all around us, and everybody's looking down into the water, pulling up. Nobody's seen it.
I was
And I
about
was
to
like,
say everybody's paying attention to the
the
water, what they're
fish,
bringing
yeah.
in.
And I'm thinking, this thing must have knew that the stripers were running today. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
was
that's what I was thinking.
coming here for a protein source. Because I'm telling you, some of those stripers were humongous. My son, if I send you the picture of the one my son-in-law caught, it was like 4 feet long. It was humongous. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. It came, it did a couple of, swoops with its wings.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear to God, it went around. It went from the west side of the Palisades across to the east side of New York State, back around again, over the cliffs, and then it was gone. Just one giant circle. And I guess they'd seen all the people, all the boats on the water, and they said, the hell with it. It's just too many people to try to dive bomb in and grab something,
Yes.
because it was humongous.
Yeah.
It was humongous. When I tell you, it was the biggest bird I've ever seen in my life.
Let me tell you something, people don't realize, I mean, apart from like little normal sized birds, and the reason why I know that is I'm really aware of birds of prey. So whenever I see that shadow on the ground,
Yep.
I look up because some of these birds, and I know what you're talking about as far as it casting a shadow, which makes you look up to see like, man, what is that? Because normally your normal regular birds, they don't do anything as far as to catch your attention. But I know exactly what you mean.
The only times I've ever been out and I seen shadows on the ground that made me look up was turkey vultures are very big, and bald eagles. Yeah. We have bald eagles up here now nesting along the Hudson because the river is clean now. I was telling my son-in-law, I said, pretty soon you won't be able to swim in the Hudson. I never thought growing up in the city as a kid, not in a million years would I ever swim in the Hudson River. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was a cesspool when I was a kid, okay? I got video of me now on floats getting pulled 100 miles an hour up the river, you know what I mean? Because the river is so clean now. It really is. And I said, it's not going to be long now before the sharks start coming back. I said, we're going to end up getting bull sharks in these rivers.
I was about to say, what do you got? That brackish water, the bull sharks?
Yeah, because the Native Americans talk about being attacked by sharks, and back in the old days, and they said there's certain times of the year you can't go in the water swimming or to clean yourself because you'll get eaten.
Right.
They actually would make walls, like stone walls, like almost like to use them as like baiting beds, so they could go in the river and fish and bathe and not have to worry about a shark coming over and getting them. There are stone walls that run underneath the Hudson River that nobody wants to talk about. Literally miles of stone walls. Yeah. And the Native Americans said they would build like little rooms out of stone that they would use for fishing or for bathing or for just the kids playing around. Not because they knew that at certain times the sharks would come in. The bull sharks would come in to have the babies. And then as the babies got big, they would be attacking whatever they could. And then they would swim back out. Just like I told my son-in-law, who's a big hunter, I said, a couple of years ago, I said, the mountain lions are coming back to New York. So he goes, oh, you're crazy. Well, he got a mountain lion on his trail cam not too long ago, right?
Oh.
And I was like, and I told him, I told you the mountain lions are going to come back because the woods are getting cleaner and everything, the environment's being cleaner. I said, now we're going to have wolves. Wolves will be coming back as well. I said, you mark my word, at some point, somewhere in New York State, someone will see a pack of wolves running at night. And it's going to be because they're coming down out of Canada, hunting, and the food. There's so many deer here. You know what I mean?
Right. That's the thing. And all these predators, that's what they follow as their food source.
Yeah, because with all these predators being gone for so long, the deer population has just exploded to beyond. They all they had to worry about was us hunting them. Nothing else was hunting them. Well, now the mountain lions are back, and I guarantee you, if not this summer, next summer, the wolves will be back as well. Yep, I'm telling you.
That'll be interesting.
And I'm telling you, the sharks will be back in the Hudson River again at some point.
And let me tell you something, those bull sharks, everybody thinks of Jaws and the Great White. Really, those bull sharks are more dangerous. They're more of a man-eater. Bull sharks, tiger sharks.
Yeah, well, bull sharks are the most aggressive out of all the sharks because they have the most, what do you call that in them? Steroids or whatever, what do you call that stuff that the men have that make them, testosterone. They're known that some species of sharks are more aggressive than others. They have the highest amount of testosterone in them than any other shark. That's what makes them so aggressive.
Right. So they're known to be. That's why there's a lot of attacks. So
Well, and they swim in shallow water.
So are you going to go in the Hudson again?
They hunt in shallow water. You're going to go tubing too.
Are you going to go tubing then?
Well,
or are you going to be like, wait a minute?
Until somebody sees a fin in the Hudson River, yes, I will continue to swim in the Hudson River. But the first time I see a fin, that'll be the last time.
That'll be it, right?
Yeah.
No more.
This year we had whales swimming up the Hudson River.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't come as far up as where I am, but they went up a couple of miles. I think maybe 5 miles up, and then they turned around and went back out towards the ocean. But the whales came up, you know what I mean? So like I say, it's just a matter of time. The more they clean the stuff up, the more predators are going to come back because the prey is here.
The how can I say it? Basically, the harmony of the wildlife kind of comes back.
Because it's out of whack because there was no predators for the fish species. There weren't any predators for the deer species. There weren't any predators. Now these predators are going to start coming back, and of course, it makes it more dangerous for someone like me who goes in the woods at night. You know what I mean?
I was about to say that's another thing. You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. And we'll close on this. A lot of people think that when you go out in the field, whether it's paranormal investigations or what you're doing when you're going cryptid, as far as and there's a lot of things that can happen to you as an investigator. If you're out in the woods, like you just pointed out, You know, there's predators out there. I've
Yeah.
heard of people in paranormal work going to some places and they basically run into squatters, you know,
Yeah,
depending on where you're going.
you could run into homeless people living in the woods.
Yes.
You could run into mountain lions. You could run into right now we have koi dogs, which are the regular dogs that bred with coyotes. So
Uh-huh.
the koi dogs are the size of German shepherds. Okay.
Okay.
So they're big compared to the coyotes. Not quite as big as the wolves, but bigger than the coyotes. And they run in packs, and they're not afraid of people because they have dog in them. You know, they're used to
Yeah.
man. You know, they're not like the coyote that's afraid of man and wants to stay away from
I
us.
didn't even know there was such a thing. That they've
Yeah, oh
actually, that's
yeah,
what they call them.
yeah. Koi dogs. Yep, that's what's up here now. So we have koi dogs that are predators. We have the mountain lions. We have the black bears. You know what I mean? And you know, so there are predators in the woods. And I always tell everybody when they go, a lot of my friends are strictly cryptid guys, and
Right.
they go in the woods for Bigfoot or Dogman. And I always tell them, whenever you go in, protect yourself physically and
Yes.
spiritually, because
Yeah.
you don't know what you're going to come across in the woods.
Yes.
And people have been using the woods for stuff for thousands of years, for
absolutely.
rituals, and you don't know what you're going to walk into. You may walk into something that's demonic. You may
Yes.
walk into something that's opening up a portal and coming through. You
Yes.
don't know what you're going to walk into.
No, let me tell you something. I'm not gonna say all the time, but usually if you're doing some type of ceremony, invocation, ritual, that you got to go out in the deep woods, chances are it might be dark.
Yes.
Okay. And you
Yes.
got to do it out of sight of whatever.
Right.
And you know,
Society.
it might involve animal sacrifices and or fill in the blank. And
Yep.
something that you cannot do, let's say in the park or
No.
anything like that. You got to go out in the woods to do it.
Yeah. I mean, and there are also good people in the woods too,
Yeah.
doing, you know, like Wiccans that are doing
Yeah.
good rituals, and other metaphysical people who are doing good stuff too with different kind of energies. You know, it's not all dark, but you never
No. But
know.
there's a
We
lot of things that even if you're Wiccan and you want to be close to nature, you know, I mean, in a pinch, you can do it in the backyard or in a park. When you start getting into the most other remote places, usually people do that. So whatever, in other words, they're far from prying eyes kind of deal.
Yeah, but this one of these locations that I have is such a place of high strangeness that
Okay.
my psychic says she's never felt energy like that before, ever. And I think anybody who's spiritual, whether you're practicing white magic or black magic or whatever, you're kind of just drawn to this place because it's a place of high strangeness, and
Right.
there's a lot of different energies there. So if you're going to go and do some kind of ritual, this would be the kind of place you want to
Is the
go
kind of
to.
place that attracts you.
Because it just amps up the energy of your ritual. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And I think it attracts all walks of life. It really does.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually you could do, you can absolutely, you can encounter a lot of unusual stuff while doing what you're trying to do. Let's say in this case for cryptid or Bigfoot, you can come across a lot of things that are unexpected. How's that?
Yeah, no, we were doing an investigation one time where it wasn't even an investigation. Me and my cameraman Bill were taking out a friend of ours who was over from England, right? And she's like, "Take me out to see. I want to see what a Sasquatch, you know, structure looks like. We don't have Sasquatch in England." So we're in the place and we're taking her to the location, and Bill is filming because that's what Bill does. He films. He's a cameraman, and it was a dry summer, and yeah, and she's had a very thick English accent. Okay.
All right.
And because it was a dry summer, we were able to get into areas of the swamp that we wouldn't be able to get into because it was dry. And I was showing her, this is a structure that was made by an adult. And this little one down here is a structure that was made by a child, an infant, because it's half-assed. You know what I mean? I was
Right.
explaining to what it looks like. And Bill puts the camera down on the log. because the mosquitoes were eating us alive, right? And he's going into the backpack to get his spray. And he's asking me, do you need the spray? And I was like, no, I got sprayed. He's asking the English woman, Heidi. And she's like, oh, no, I'm okay. And we're doing this, and we're spraying the spray. And the camera is facing me and Heidi, and it's still filming. When Bill went home, because Heidi was staying at his house, they put the day's events up on the big TV so they could relive it. And when he put that camera down on the log, and I'm telling you, there was only 3 of us in the woods. You heard a woman's voice, not once, but twice go, Bill. And then it went, 2 minutes later, it went, Bill, like Bill. And he calls me up and he goes, dude, you're not going to believe it. I got a Class A EVP. And he's freaking out. And I go, what are you freaking out for? This is what we do. He goes, yeah, but they're not calling your name. They're calling mine.
I was going to say, hey, you know what? I'm out there looking for Bigfoot and I'm getting an EVP.
And everybody he listened to it all thought it was Heidi. And I go, how could they possibly think it was Heidi when Heidi was having a conversation with me, and you can hear her English in the accent in the background talking to me? And the woman who said Bill had no accent. It was just Bill, just like that. Clear as day. It was an A+ EVP, mind-boggling, and
that's incredible. But yeah, I'm glad you point that out. You know, when you least expect it, you get it.
Yeah, we didn't hear it audibly, none of us, you know, and we were in those woods all day. And if he didn't go back and put it on the big screen to show, you know, the events of the day, he wouldn't have heard it until whenever he reviewed it.
He's looking for the mosquito spray, and he's getting an EVP.
And that's why I say protect yourself spiritually and physically. You know, I don't allow anybody to take firearms with me because I don't trust anybody with a gun but myself. And if I don't have one, you're not going to have one. But we take 18-inch machetes, 10-inch survival knives, pepper spray. You know what I mean? Right. We got some kind of steel to put between us and what's ever out there, you know? Sure. And we always sage before we go in. We say a white prayer. We hit us with holy water, holy oil, sweet grass, you know. We go in, and when we come out, we do the same thing. I cleanse my equipment going in, and I cleanse my equipment coming out. And I tell people all the time, cleanse your stuff because you're using it to make contact. And entities just don't attach to dolls. They can attach to anything. Absolutely. So if you don't want any hitchhikers coming home with you, cleanse your equipment before you go home.
You know, everybody thinks that attachment is only like to antiques and stuff like that.
Yeah, No.
No, like you said about those dolls. You know how everybody thinks about, you know, those old dolls, and I go, no. 60s, 70s, it could be any object.
Anything. It could be a sword. I mean, I've been to antique places where I've seen some really nice sabers. I'm a knife guy, a long blade guy. I like that. When I was doing martial arts, I always trained with the samurai sword. That was my favorite tool to train with. You know, so I'm a sword guy. But I can't tell you how many times I picked up a sword or a saber and looked at it and said, oh man, I want this. And then say, you know what? I don't know what it's. My father brought home a samurai sword from World War II when he fought in Africa, Europe, and in Burma, right? In the South Pacific. He brought home a German Luger from Europe, and he brought home a samurai sword from Burma. And on that samurai sword, it has like 75 notches on it.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? So whoever whaled that thing was a profuse killing machine. Yeah. You know?
I can't think of any other reason why a sword would have notches on it.
Yes, the handle has 75 notches on it. And I was like, and my father had, it's funny too, because my father used to have a bar in his house, and he had the sword display on one thing and the gun on another, right? And one night he fell asleep on the couch watching TV in the basement. That's what a bar was. and he heard talking. Like he thought he heard a German talking, and he thought he heard Japanese talking. And he's like, what the hell? And he looked at the bar, and he seen a German soldier and a Japanese soldier having a conversation. The Japanese soldier in Japanese and the German soldier in German. And he just went like, whoa, that's crazy. And he asked my mother, he said, did you see that? And my mother said yes. My mother was psychic, so my mother seen it, you know. But she didn't say anything to him because she knew he didn't believe in anything. But it woke him up out of a deep sleep. And
I bet you, was that one of the last times he slept down in the basement?
No, he would fall asleep my father would drink like 20 ounces of espresso and then lay down and fall asleep. You know,
you know what? There's people. That's crazy.
He would fill like a 20-ounce glass of a black coffee, fill it halfway up with sugar, and then he'd put anisette on top of the sugar.
Wow.
Suck it all down. My father, sweet tooth. Suck it all down. Go lay down on the couch and start snoring immediately. And then he would wake up like an hour later, all refreshed. I was like, who drinks 20 ounces of espresso and falls asleep? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but he's been doing that since he was a kid in Italy, you know. So
you don't. That by then you're like, the caffeine doesn't do nothing to you.
Nothing to him, but when he told me that story, for my father to tell me that story, this is a guy who's seen a ghost run through the engine block of his car, look right in the front windshield, go, and then run out into the bay with his best friend sitting right there. And even when he told the story, he didn't believe it. Meanwhile, his best friend would be like shaking in his boots and have tears in his eyes when my father would tell the story. So for him to tell me that he's seen a German officer and a Japanese having a conversation behind the bar next to both of those pieces, I was like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, you know, because the gun, actually, the German Luger was made in 1918 before First World War. So that must have been passed down from one family member to another for World War II. You know what I mean? So whatever the officer was who he took it off of must have been somebody whose family was a military family. Yeah.
Exactly. Like a family heirloom kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
Like, in other words, there's, like you said, there's energy to this because.
Yeah, it's been through 2 world wars, World War I and World War II, Absolutely. You know? Yeah. And the same thing with that samurai sword. I mean, you know, when I seen it, when my father passed and I got the gun and the sword and I seen the notches on it, I was like, oh man, do I want to keep this under my bed, you know?
It's one of those things that you just, there's lots of ways to interpret it, but not really.
No, so it's got its own. I have a machete under the bed, but not the samurai sword. The samurai sword it's got its own little home. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because I don't need any shadow figures standing over me at night speaking Japanese. You know.
I'll be calling Miss Aida.
Miss Aida. Believe me, I call Miss Aida all the time.
Miss Aida, how does you work with any Japanese stuff?
Listen to this. I'll make it real quick because I know we got to go. Friend of mine called me. A friend of a friend has something attached to him. Showed me the video of how it happened. Listen to this story. It's gonna freak you out.
Okay.
This guy stopped in the middle of the Mojave Desert, right? All by himself. His best friend is up at a hole in the side of the cave, which they thought was a mine, like a gold mine, right?
Okay.
So his friend said, I'm going to go up here and you stay here. I'll call you, tell you what equipment to bring up. Now they're actually looking for Bigfoot, saying that Bigfoot lives in mines in the desert. Okay.
Okay.
So this guy goes up and it's like, a quarter mile away, half a mile away. And this other guy's waiting by the car in the middle of the Mojave Desert. It's 120 degrees. There's nobody around. Death Valley. Okay. Car pulls up. Guy gets out and he says, would you like some ice? So the guy at the car says, yeah, my ice all melted. He comes out and takes a box, a cardboard box out of the trunk of his car with a solid block of ice. The ice is not melting. This ice is it's not in a cooler. It's in a cardboard box. He takes a couple of chunks, throws it in his cooler. He's having this conversation with this guy. And the guy looks Spanish, like Mexican.
Right.
So the guy was waiting for his buddy to call him, starts talking to him in Spanish. And he says, no, I don't speak Spanish. I'm not Spanish. And he said, where are you from? Because I'm from Central America.
Okay.
Because you don't speak Spanish. He said, no, I don't speak Spanish. So as they're talking, the Mexican guy, we'll call him a Mexican guy, says to the white guy, would you say a prayer with me? And the guy says, well, I'm not really religious, but I'll say a prayer. If you want me to say a prayer with you. So the white guy says a prayer in English. The Mexican guy says a prayer in a language he doesn't know. Okay. After he finishes saying the prayer, the little Mexican guy turns to the white guy and says, now all my troubles are yours. Gets in the car, drives away. Now his buddy is filming all this from the mine. He's got his camera going, he's filming it. Now he can't hear what they're saying, but he's filming the whole thing. Now, when his buddy came up with the stuff, he said, who was that guy? I said, I don't know. He said, well, where was he from? He said, I don't know. The license plate on his car, I never seen before. I never seen a license plate with that kind of license plate. I don't know where he's from. So he said, well, what did you do? He said, well, we said a prayer, but he said in the language I never heard of before, So now they're at the mouth of this cave, and the guy with all the equipment is about to go in. And as he goes in, a rush of air comes out of this cave. Now the cave only goes back 10 feet. You know what I mean? A rush of air comes in. His buddy is still filming, and he's filming green pentagrams coming out of the cave. And in the middle of those pentagrams is a blue ball, like an orb.
Okay.
The guy who was going in, whatever this thing is that rushed out, knocked him down. He's laying on the ground looking up, but he sees the different color pentagrams. He sees the blue ball. It goes by him. They find these stones set up in a circle, like a fire pit, but it wasn't a fire pit. Then they found like a cairn made out of stones with a standing stone on top of it, and they don't know what the hell they're looking at. So as they're moving around the mountainside, his friend is continuing to film him. And I swear to God, if you see the video, it'll blow your mind. The guy's face morphs. He changes. He doesn't look like the same old white guy that was down by the car. He looks like a Mexican. He's got something wrong with one of his ears, like it's half cut off or something.
Oh my God.
And he looks nothing like he did when they get down to the car. Right? And his buddy is still filming, and his eyes change. They look like reptilian eyes, right? So he calls me up. I'm watching this guy. My friend's a podcaster like you, and he had this guy on his show. And the guy says, ever since that guy said that to me, I've had nothing but bad luck. My car broke down. My house burnt down. I've been bitten 4 times by poisonous snakes, and I still haven't died yet. So he goes, I don't want to call it a curse, but I'm going to call it bad luck. So I typed in the chat room, dude, you're fucking cursed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So after the show was over, my friend calls me, because everybody in the chat room says, you gotta talk to Al. You gotta talk to Al. He knows all the right people. You gotta talk to Al. So my friend calls me after the interview's over. He says, do you know anybody who can help him? I said, I don't know if I know anybody to help him, but let me ask around. So I call Miss Aida, and I tell her all this, and I said, I think the guy is cursed. I don't know for sure, and she goes, what language did the guy say the other prayer in? I said, he didn't know. He never heard it before. So maybe he was Mayan. I don't know if he was Mayan.
Well, you know what? Even out of Guatemala, they have the Mam Indians that, believe it or not, their first language is Mam. They know Spanish, but maybe that thing about he didn't know Spanish, but he just didn't want this guy. He thought, what if he knows Spanish and he's going to realize that what I'm putting on him is a good curse?
Right. And that's what Miss Aida said. When he was saying his prayer in English, who knows what this guy was putting on him?
Sure.
So anyway, I said, do you think he's cursed? And Miss Aida said, no, those things that were there, that circle of rocks and that standing stone, she said they were put there to keep something in that cave.
Okay.
And when this guy said, because this guy said to him, oh, you found that cave up there? That's a really important cave. That's what he said to him when he first started the conversation. And so she goes, I think those things were put there to bind something. And when that guy put that spell on him or whatever he said to him, that broke the bind. And when that thing came out, she says that she believes that that guy has a demon attached to him now. She goes, he's not cursed. He has an attachment. So he goes, she goes, Al, if I was to fly out to Washington State, it would cost, I would need a team to deal with this. And it would cost this guy like 10 grand. She goes, the best thing he could do is find a Catholic church out there that's willing to do an exorcism on him, because that's what he has. He's got a demon. So I've been reaching out to people like John Zaffis and Larry Elwards and all these other people I know who are in the demonologist field, you know.
Right. See if they got a contact out there.
Do you have anybody out there that we could put in contact for this guy? And Miss Aida gave me a name of somebody, and John gave me a name of somebody, John and Larry. And so I reached out to them. One of the guys did reach out back to me. He wants to know more about it. And I said, listen, here's my phone number. Call me, because I'm not going to text this whole big schmeal out to you. I don't like texting as it is. But if you want to call me and talk to me, I'll be more than happy to tell you the story. But it is, so my friend, actually, when he was showing the video of his eyes turning like the slits, he screenshot it on his computer, and he sent me an image of it. He goes, this way you can send it to these people if you have anybody, you know, so they can see what this guy is dealing with. Because, and I asked Miss Aida, I says, how do you get bit by 4 poisonous snakes?
I know, that's like,
and not die.
Yes.
Not die. And she said she had a name for it. She actually had a name for it. She said, because of the demon that's attached to this guy, poison doesn't do anything to him. You know what I mean? Like the poison doesn't kill the demon. And because the demon is attached to this guy.
Yeah, no, this is his host. So he's protecting his host.
He's protected. Because this guy has been out in the wilderness. He's 80 years old, this old man. He's been out in the wilderness for 60 years, never been bit by a snake once. Now he's been bit 4 times, right? And they're all poisonous snakes. And all different kinds, too. It's crazy.
Let me tell you something. But just the fact that you're in the Mojave, up drives this guy selling ice. Say, you want some ice?
Not even selling. He said, would you like some ice?
Oh, no, okay. You want some ice? I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
That is so unusual.
And the old man is 80 years old. You know what I mean? So he said, would you pray with me? He said,
a lot of people don't realize that a lot of those things start as exactly what you just described. It's called an exchange.
An exchange, yeah. Well, Miss Aida had a word for it as far as, you know, the demon and protecting him from the poisonous snakes and stuff. But I never heard the word before, and I couldn't remember it if my life depended on it. But like I said, she gave me and someone's name, and Larry Elwards and John gave me somebody's name. So I'm trying to find somebody who knows somebody on the West Coast. All of my interviews are basically done on East Coast to like the furthest most of the time I go is like Colorado.
Let me ask you something, though. Is he willing? Is he aware that he needs that help?
Yes, he's aware that he needs help, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of this, because whatever this guy did to him, you know, whether it's a curse or an attachment or what, or put a spell on him that would release what was ever in that cave, break that binding spell, you know what I mean? Whatever it was no. And the crazy thing about it is the cameraman who was filming on a regular camcorder and on his smartphone, and he caught exactly the same images on both phones, which was exactly what the old man on the floor saw with his naked eye.
Wow.
So it wasn't artifacts from one camera or the other.
Or
You know
was
what I
it?
mean?
Or yeah, one camera's just whatever it captured it, but why wouldn't
Right.
the other one?
Yeah. So they both
Exactly.
caught it exact. There was no artifacts. With any digital artifacts to make it, everything that the cameras caught, the old man seen with his naked eye. It was just unbelievably crazy. And the best thing about it is his partner, who was up at the cave, was
Right.
filming the whole time. He filmed the whole episode of the car pulling up, the guy getting out, giving him the ice, saying the prayer, getting back in the car, driving it away, and that was it.
It would be really interesting if he could. Did it record the language that guy spoke?
No, he was too far away.
Too far away. Okay.
It was just video. There was no audio. Yeah, no, he was too far. He was like a quarter mile away up on the mountain.
It'd be interesting if it, somebody could, like, hey, is there any way, a snippet of it and see if anybody would recognize it?
Miss Aida said, just your intent trying to help this guy, you're putting yourself in harm's way. I want you to start wearing like a blessed cross or something. So I got my St. Michael's medal on today that's been blessed, and I'm wearing an iron bracelet that she sent me.
There you go.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, you know what? She is absolutely right. She's absolutely right. The last whatever's there, with this guy is going to try to detour anybody that's gonna, especially with an exorcist, that's gonna like oust him out or him, whatever it. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah, this is way above my pay grade. I'm no way, because she goes, Al, if I go out there, she goes, I'm putting myself in harm's way.
Yeah.
Because this is dark and this is powerful, And I was like, yeah, no, I don't want you. I want your, your advice.
Whatever it is that they bound in a cave. Yeah. That's not your run-of-the-mill dead person.
And it could have been the Native Americans, Apaches, or Navajo, whoever out there that bound that thing in that cave. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But the question is, why would that guy? It's almost like, you're waiting for the patsy to come along and go, wait a minute. I want to say it's almost like a trade-off, like exactly like what he said. Maybe it was bound there or something. I can get it off of me.
No, all my problems are yours now. Yeah, something to that effect. Yeah, but I asked Miss Aida. I said, "Look, the vibe I got from the video, not knowing anything about it, right, was that dude with the ice was a witch. I felt like he was a witch." And Miss Aida said, "Al, you are 100% right. He was definitely a witch."
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I just, like I said, I don't claim to be psychic, but that was the energy. Because when I seen the cave, I wrote in the chat room, I was like, that cave's got some bad mojo coming out of it.
You know what? I mean? The eyes of all things, somebody all of a sudden wants to pray with you, but they're praying in some unknown language. I'd be like, what? Yeah,
no, I would have just told him, sorry, dude, I don't pray.
It's like, nah. Yeah, and I don't need your eyes, by the way, either.
And the funny thing about it, he said, when they went out there that day with their coolers full of ice, their ice it was 120 degrees that day. Their ice only lasted like an hour. And this other guy's ice never melted.
Incredible. That's very interesting.
Isn't that insane?
Well, it's just insane. Sometimes those witches, what they do is they ask to be brought somebody. Okay. Now, always there's the free will. This guy could have turned around and said, nah, I don't need ice. And no, I'm not going to pray with you. But they always want that chance. Like, bring me somebody that I could do whatever I want to do.
And the funny thing about it is they were driving, when they were driving through the desert, they weren't planning to go to that cave. The driver just happened to see it out of his peripheral vision and said, I wonder if that's like a gold mining cave. Let me go see. And they pulled off and he went up to see, and then he called his buddy down below. He said, it's only like 10 feet deep. Well, you should bring up some paranormal equipment. Let's see if we can get anything out of it. And then this guy pulled up, and like I said, they were actually trying to prove that Bigfoots do live in the deserts and they're using the caves and the mines during the day, and then they're coming out at night nocturnally to hunt, you know,
Right.
because a lot of people say, oh no, they're only in the wilderness. They're only in the wilderness. Now, I don't personally believe that. I believe they're everywhere. They can adapt to all kinds of
So this wasn't even a
environments.
planned stop per se. This
No,
was just something.
no. He caught it out of the peripheral vision, and he seen it, and he pulled over, and his buddy was following him in a different car. He pulled over behind them, and it's just crazy. I mean, if the guy didn't film the entire thing, I would have never believed it. Never believed it. As crazy as it is. I mean, but could you imagine thinking you're doing something good, praying with somebody, and then he says, now all my problems are yours.
But you know what? And this is the thing, I think, Al, that throws a lot of people for the loop, that sometimes they think that people think, oh, well, I wasn't meaning anything bad, and I just bought or took ice, and I was doing a prayer. It doesn't matter what your intent was. What matters is the intent of the other person.
Right.
In other words, sometimes you don't have to be that cooperative. And sometimes, like I said, the exchange lies in with the ice. That was like the opening. The exchange.
Yeah, that was his thing to get to talk to that guy, you know, and to get to, you know, and he's seen an 80-year-old guy standing on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And he said, and the old man was smart enough to look at the car and at the license plate. And he said it was a license plate that he's never seen before in his life. He doesn't know where it came from or what it was supposed to represent. It wasn't anything that was in the United States.
Well, let me tell you something. It could have come down from south of the border, you know, and you know, you can drive that car up and then just leave. I mean, eventually you would have to change your plate, but that doesn't mean that.
I mean, the guy said he was like from Central America, but he didn't speak Spanish. But you don't speak Spanish, and you're asking a total stranger to pray with you, and then you pray with him in a language that he's never heard before, you know. Oh man, just the whole thing is crazy.
Yes,
like I said,
but you know that down in like Peru and Bolivia, and I'm going to say this real quick because you talked about how the mines, you know, that they thought that it was an old mine or whatever. Down in those areas, a lot of the natives are the ones that are the mine workers, because it's very difficult conditions to mine there. And they believe that because it is there, it's the premise of the devil. And they make these effigies of the devil, okay, that they call Tío Diablo, which is like uncle.
Okay.
And they give it cigarettes and stuff. And sometimes they'll even sacrifice llamas, because to them, the underground, in other words, they go to this effigy for protection. All right, because they're saying in the bowels of the earth, the only one that will protect you is the devil, even though it's the devil,
right?
Kind of thing. And there's a whole cult surrounding that, and there's more to it than just some of the stuff that people that guy talking a language that he couldn't recognize. There's other languages spoken down in these countries besides Spanish.
Yeah, we were thinking maybe Mayan or Inca or something like that. You know what I mean?
They have their native. The natives have retained their native language.
Yeah, sure they have. Yeah, and they're still Indians. You know, Native Americans that we call Indians down in South America, Central America. You know what I mean? And they don't speak Spanish. They speak the language of their ancestors. So yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy. I mean, my friend called me up and he says, dude, you got to watch this show tonight. It's going to blow your mind. And I was like, okay, I'll watch it. You know, because he told me all about it. And I was like, his eyes turned to reptilian. Because Al, his eyes turned to reptilian. It looked like cat eyes. And when he stopped that video during the interview, and they blew up his picture, his eyes were vertical. His pupils.
You know what that is? Then they're most definitely there. It sounds like they're dealing with a non-human entity.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, it was just crazy. So my friend, he had brought something home from Florida. He went bigfooting down in Florida one year, and he brought something dark home with him in the woods, you know. Yes. And he was lucky enough not only to know me, but to live like in the next town over from Larry and Deb Elwards. So when I reached out to Larry and Deb to go to his house, they said, "Oh, Al, he lives like 2 minutes from us. We're not going to charge him for this. We'll go there because he's a friend of yours. We'll do him a favor for you." And I was like, I said, "I greatly appreciate it. It's not necessarily, but thank you very much." And they went there and they cleansed his house and they cleansed because his grandchildren live with him and they were afraid. And in his studio, his cat wouldn't even walk past the studio door. And now he said we can't even get the cat out of the studio anymore. So they cleansed his house, they cleansed him, they bound his property. So whatever was attached, whatever he brought home from Florida is now back in Florida. But so he said, could you call, Larry and Deb for me and see if they know anybody? Because this guy really needs help desperately, And I said, yeah, I'll call Larry and Deb and I'll call John. And because I was just with John that Saturday night, I said, I'll call John and we'll see. And I said, I talked to Miss Aida and she sent me people to call. She said, these people, none of these people live out on the West Coast, but they live like central the United States.
They're closer.
Or, they're closer and maybe they know somebody out there that would do it for them, So that's all we're trying to do is connect the bridge to somebody who's out there that's willing to go and take care of this for this guy, because I don't know how the Catholic Church is out on Washington State, if they're willing to do exorcisms or if they're just going to blow this old man off.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Sometimes, you belong to a parish that's more open-minded or understands that does exist. And then there's others that are like, oh my God, that poor old guy, he's losing his mind,
Right, he's probably got dementia or something. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but the old man is sharp as a tack. But I mean, it's just, I had to tell you that story because that's
a great story, though.
Mind-boggling.
I would love to follow up with you, Al. I would love to know how that ends, and hopefully.
Yeah, you know what? I get a minute, I'll send you the link. You can watch my friend.
Yes.
You can watch my friend's show. I think it was only an hour and a half, and it's got all the video and all the dialogue.
Let me ask you something. How long ago did that happen? That thing in the desert. How long ago was that?
A few years ago, I think, about like 5 years.
So he's been dealing with this already for a while, then.
5 years, I think. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I mean, first his car breaks down, then his house burns down, and he's homeless, and then he's out doing these scavenging things in the desert and the wilderness. He's getting bit by all kinds of poisonous snakes and being licked.
No, absolutely. Let me tell you something. Yeah, he better he would probably have to get. I hate to say it, if he can't find anything out there, he might be. If he really wants it, he might have to travel a little bit himself. To get help.
Oh yeah, I mean, he may have to travel. I mean, I don't know if he's got a new car or whatever, but I mean, he may have to travel.
Hopefully, he will come across somebody over there at Catholic Church, or hopefully the parish or somewhere, or they have some exorcist that runs out in that diocese.
Yeah, or even like a demonologist that's willing to do a deliverance on him or something. You know what I mean? Somebody to help him.
Let me ask you something. Somebody you could also Bill Bean might be somebody you could contact.
Yeah, I got Bill is in my contact list, but if I remember correctly, he's down south, right, North Carolina.
He's in Maryland, but I know Bill. I'm not sure what Bill is, but I know I've heard that he travels. Maybe he'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't know.
I know that's the thing. It's on the other side of the country,
right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it would charge you. I mean, like Miss Aida said, if she was to go there, she'd have to get a team. It would cost it would cost the old man like $10,000. She said if she can get the church to do it, they do it for free.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Hopefully, it will turn out good. But send me that link, Al.
I will definitely send you the link. Absolutely.
It's been wonderful. You got to come back and we got to follow up.
Anytime you want, you just reach out to me, and you always got me when you want me.
Thank you, Al. It has been wonderful.
No, it's great conversation. Ciao.
Ciao. I love talking to Al. I love talking to all my guests, but I really love talking to Al. I've talked to him a bunch of times because he's got these great stories. And what we were talking about before we started was that when you've been doing this for a long time, like years is what I'm talking about, and you've been out in the field, and that's what we were talking about, like that dungeon approach where, you were doing investigations of what, paranormal, when there before all the gadgets, and like he said, you're relying on, basically a dowsing rod, your senses, that thing with, I still have mine in my bag. I have a compass in there. All right. Um, things that are more basic, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, the FLIR and all that thing, and that it's like, that's great, but those things weren't always around. And if you're really serious about it, like I said, the human body is also very, if once you know how to read your body, you kind of sometimes you beat the equipment to know when something's coming, or there's an arrival imminent of something, an arrival, a manifestation, something like that. You almost feel it in your body, like either gathering energy, or if anybody's done paranormal investigations, especially, some of these events announce themselves. There's a shift in the air, either things all of a sudden, because a lot of times when you're in an investigation, things are quiet to begin with. It's not like you're in the middle of a house party. Things are quiet, but there's still like little ambient noises here and there. And sometimes right before something will manifest, or like I say, come in, all of a sudden it becomes really quiet, like unnaturally quiet, so unnaturally quiet that you notice. It's like, what? Sometimes there's all these little signs that if you know what to notice, you realize, okay, something is gathering energy, or something, like I said, is arriving. All right. Sometimes, because I'm sure there's people that, for whatever reason, some manifestations, whatever it is, only come out at night or in the day, or under certain weather conditions, or because, like he was talking about it, and I've encountered that, where basically you chase them into a confrontation. You might be going from room to room. They might be hiding out in the attic. You finally make your way up to the attic, and it's like there's nowhere left to go. And you were thinking, okay, well, if this is an incorporeal, how can I say, spirit, why can't I just, teleport? But for some reason, I've found that a lot of them hang out in unused places. And I don't know if it's in the, how can I say, the perception is that I'm here and I can't get out, because now the investigators are here. So where all of a sudden you'll feel that change, that shift, where something is about to happen. All right. And then that's a lot of times you might have, one time I was on an investigation, and it wasn't really that big a house, but we had a cameraman. I was across the hall. I mean, the people were there. This wasn't, and he was just panning around just to film, just to see what he could capture. And this is two bedrooms facing each other. And I'm over here talking to the people, and I can kind of see this video guy across into the other room, and he's been there by himself. And all of a sudden, whatever was just pushed him right into the bed. I see him go, woo! Thank God you have a camera and all, into the bed. And we're like, what, are you okay? And he's like, man, something just pushed me. And there was nothing there. It was a bedroom, by the way. And sometimes that'll happen. Like, it's like, I'm getting out of here. Just like a regular person, like, even like if it was a regular person, like, I'm going to bolt and you're standing in my way. So if I have to push you to get out, I'm going to do it. Again, you could circle back and say, well, if the spirit has no body, why would it matter? There's somebody standing there between it and the exit. But their perception is that they might still have a body. That kind of deal. Whatever it is. I don't know. But anyway, I hope you like this interview with Al Santariga. He's great. He's fantastic. And of course, like I said, he is the Bronxville Paranormal Society. That's where you could find him. And you could find him anywhere. You Google him, his name. And I will put a link in the credits of the show so that you could find Al. And he's worked it all. He's done the paranormal stuff. He's done the cryptid stuff. He's seen it. He's talked to a lot of people, just what he was describing right now, people that have these experiences and they end up, you know, like that this guy 5 years later, all right, and you know, and sometimes unfortunately it takes no, maybe not that long. It depends on the chain of events, but sometimes it takes people a while to realize, man, everything, all these weird or unlucky things or whatever you want to call them started happening to me after this event. By the way, nobody lives a perfect life. Sometimes people want to read stuff into anything. They want to read into it like, oh, you know, something's wrong. There's something. I don't know. That's a human condition. You know, cars get flat tires, cars get broken, things happen. But sometimes when you have certain like pretty bad stuff happen all together, and all of a sudden you're like, man, this all happened since. But in other words, you can only have that vantage point as maybe time goes by and you look back and you go, wait a minute, you know, ever since this event, I've had this and this and this and this. And it's like, ah, man, talk about what are the odds on this? And that's where you start thinking, okay, then there might be more to this whole scenario than just bad luck. But again, I'm hoping he can get help. I'm hoping that whatever diocese is out there where he lives is going to give him a hand, all right, and take care of it for him, because that is no way to live. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Please don't forget to sign up to my newsletter via Substack. And like I said, I have articles, interviews, old interviews, announcements. It's all there on my Substack, Marlene's newsletter. All right, you can go to mppellicer.com, miamighostchronicles.com, storiesofthesupernatural.info, nightshadediary.com, and eerie.news. All of those have links to everywhere. So until next time, thank you so much for being part of my audience, and you are all wonderful.